Okay, so hopefully sound and everything is working fine. I'm probably not going to be checking chat or anything just because of the nature of what I'm doing. But today I thought I would go through Lion and Dragon. It is an OSR system that is highly similar to Lamentations of the Flame Princess, which is basically a condensed version of BX D&D that is fine-tuned for a certain type of playstyle. So that's the thing that the OSR is fantastic about, is basically taking familiar rules and reapplying them to be useful in other lights, or to emulate certain genres, things like that. And because of the fact that you're taking familiar rules, they're very easy to pick up. You can mix and match things very easily. Mechanics flow very naturally from one to the other, and players find it much easier to pick up and play. So a lot of great benefits. So I wanted to just kind of like go over what makes Lion and Dragon what it is, and making characters and all that kind of stuff. So you have here the default setting assumptions. So here's the thing about Lion and Dragon. Lion and Dragon is a system, but it is also a system that is meant to emulate a particular kind of play. So you can use it theoretically for anything that is medieval adjacent. However, it is most adept for emulating European medieval with this kind of somewhat magical quality. That is to say that it's not as medieval England existed absolutely. It includes fantastical elements, but there are some restraints on these fantastical elements. Basically, the biggest thing that you would notice is that the fantastic is reduced to what people believed actually was possible at that time, just from what historical context gives us. So you don't have orcs, you don't have things of that nature, but you do have elves. You do have dragons, sort of. Basically, a lot of it is dependent on what you want to do with it. So you can choose to run an entirely monsterless campaign, if you like, or where the non-human is basically just animals. But he does include these things if that's something you want to do. Now, it should be noted that Lion and Dragon is basically his system that he devised. I say his as in the author's, that he devised to be used for his Dark Albion campaign. So Dark Albion is a specific setting. It's England during the War of the Roses with these fantastical elements occurring. So it is a particular setting, and but you can use the system for basically anything medieval. Let's see. It does have some kind of quirks here and there that kind of suggest that you would be playing in his particular setting, and I'll kind of go over those. So you have these default setting assumptions. So social status is extremely important. This is something that you do not typically see in the average D&D game. I say average because theoretically you can do whatever the hell you want with D&D. That's part of what its charm is. However, a lot of times social status is extremely not very emphasized. You have maybe kings and queens and occasional nobles and things like that. But there's so much upward mobility in the conventional way that people play Dungeons and Dragons that it's almost negligible. Assuming that you have enough money, you can do pretty much anything. That's not really the case here. People do not typically trade with money. It's not the norm. It can be done, but people don't typically have a lot of cash on hand. It's because their communities are set mostly, especially in the periphery, not so much in like the big cities, but to be very focused on farming and good barter and shit like that. So that is why you don't, well, part of why you don't have a lot of upward mobility. There's also the church has a big influence. So monotheism, um, it's a monotheistic world. I say world. It's a monotheistic setting. Now you do have other gods that are things that other cultures believe in. For instance, the Church of the Unconquered Sun is the main church for the English. And here he calls it English, I believe. A lot of these are kind of like offshoots or of actual, you know, historical things. So instead of having Islam, it's basically the crescent moon. Um, Instead of the well, there's a lot of little things here and there, but one of the big things I guess is that you will have monotheism. So most D&D games have this kind of um, polytheistic view. It's everybody knows that all these gods are real. There's not really a question about it because they make shit happen, right? Um, it's kind of one of those things where you have a religion that is widely instituted. This is, basically Catholicism with the serial number filed off. Um, so you have the trappings that come with it. There's some slightly changed things here and there, such as, it doesn't refer to Jesus. It's actually Apollonius. So you have the history on what happened to the martyr figure is slightly different. It's not about a crucifixion. He was, I believe that he didn't really age. There's a whole lot of like little things here and there. But as far as what the players are going to experience, it's very much like just living in a world where Catholicism is extremely powerful, and that's not something that most D&D settings have. It means that whenever they encounter a cleric, that person has inherent social power. So a cleric is oftentimes more like an inquisitor, trying to find. So there are some parallels to like paladins and other systems. The cleric, can go around, do these investigations. It's trying to find sources of chaos and destroy them, purify, the world more or less. And so because of that, people treat the clerics differently. Their law, as far as law goes, there's ecclesiastic law and there's secular law. So there's actually information in here on how to work both of them. Again, that also kind of plays a little bit into social status, because if you're a peasant and you badmouth a noble, then they can have you beaten. So, and there's nothing illegal about that. That's just how it is. There's also mention here that there's a kind of a misconception about the nobility, speaking in that lane, where the nobility would just go and, throw out beatings and just treat, commoners like piss, basically. But the book suggests, and, I'm not a historian, but what little, history I've looked into for medieval times seems to kind of coalesce with this. That nobles would often actually try and be as benevolent as they could to the common folk, because ultimately the common folk are what kind of keep everything going. And I mean, if you're too bad, then bad stuff is going to happen to you as a noble. But yeah, so the relationship was often pretty. It was one of benevolence, not so much malevolence. There are exceptions, but they're not terribly common. It's kind of a mess because on one hand that's true, but on the other hand, from what I understand, if a commoner, if a peasant does something bad, and there's any indication that any other peasants might have known they were going to do it, then basically everybody gets punished. So, it's definitely not a system of fairness as far as that goes. But there's not necessarily this whole. You're not going to portray every noble that the players come across as being some total asshole that doesn't care about their serfs, their peasants, their city dwellers, all that kind of stuff. You actually roll your social class, which is pretty neat. But if you are a cleric, then you basically are in your own social class, more or less. It considers you of the knightly class as far as starting equipment, but as far as like your treatment goes, it's something a little bit different. So the third one, life is cheap. Now this is kind of an OSR staple. So you're gonna die probably. Living to be a high level character is not the norm, and this is partially an OSR thing, and it's partially from what's listed here as an attempt to try and make things more realistic historically. You have a lot of very important, influential knights and kings and all of that who were snuffed out in their prime because of a stray arrow, stuff like that. So that is partially trying to emulate the genre and partially an OSR thing. Most OSR systems that I've seen have a lot higher HP levels than this game. This game, unlike most of them, seem to cut off your HP growth or at least severely stifle it after level 9. This one, it's after level 1. So the only time that you really get another hit die of health is whenever you roll in the benefits table or choose to get more health whenever you level up. So people aren't going to be having a lot of HP in this, which means death is pretty prevalent. I've seen less fair systems, but it's still a thing. Magic is rare. So magic in this game is definitely not like most D&D. So you don't have a Vancian magic system. You don't have spell slots, like in 5th edition. Instead, what you have is very ritualistic magic. So basically there are 2 classes that have access to magic. And I'm not including the cleric in this because that's more like prayers, miracles. So thematically, I feel like that's substantially different, especially in this system. But in this, basically, the Magister is what would be your equivalent to a wizard. However, they do very little, they don't do fireballs and stuff like that. The magic that is in here is mostly, from what has been said, again, I'm not a scholar on this, but is mostly equivalent to what people believed you could do. So there's a lot of really neat shit in here about magic. You can create what's called a blasting wand that kind of lets you do magical damage, and it's more likely to hit for a wizard type character, but it is melee. So the Magister. Oh yeah, then of course they can do this one thing where they can cause an earthquake to happen, but it can also swallow them up, But a lot of the other magic, it's very. This is the kind of magic that you do beforehand. You do it in preparation, so you try and kind of have all your ducks in a row before you ever need this stuff. And a lot of it happens to deal with like buffs and debuffs and curses and things like that. So it's very neat. And another thing that's widely featured, or at least accessible in a way, is demon summoning, which basically anybody can attempt to summon a demon, but holy shit, you are going to have a bad day if you try and do this without the proper channels. So you need to have tools. You need to have, if you need to be a Magister or a Cymri traveler in order to have a decent chance at it, because you use your class level to add to your score whenever you're making your rolls for it. And failure is pretty serious. If you fail, then you're going to be possessed by a demon. So, yeah, I'll go into that more in a little bit, but that's just my trying to emphasize that magic is rare. And additionally, oh, well, actually, that's kind of covered in the next part. So, civilization is survival. More or less, you don't encounter monsters unless you're kind of like out in the middle of nowhere or in some kind of desolate place people aren't at. People know better than to go there because it's fucking dangerous. So like there are places where you might find an elf would be where the veil is very thin. So in my game, I would put that obviously in kind of like very deep woods. And then as far as like a dragon goes, everyone might say, don't go over to this mountain because, people believe there's a dragon there. And, people believe that these things exist. You aren't really going to talk to commoners and them say, oh, no, that's just bullshit. You aren't really going to see a whole lot of that because they are, these things do exist and these stories get passed down and things like that, but they might not know exactly what everything is actually like. So you can't just go around and ask, how to kill a troll. Then everyone's going to be like, oh, you just use fire and, whatever. So whenever safety is found in civilization, basically. So let's see, creating a character. So the character creation process in Dark Albion, or not Dark Albion, I'm sorry. Sometimes I conflate the setting with the system. But anyway, it follows the oracular process that is, very common in OSR games. So you roll 3d6 in order to determine your ability scores. Okay. It uses the old school modifiers. So you have a -3 to +3 spread that is a bell curve. So you're far more likely to have 0 as your modifier. The chances to have a +3, I think it's like 1%, maybe 2. I rarely ever see it happen, but when it does happen, that's cool beans. So you roll your ability scores. You select an ethnic background. Now, that can be tied to class. So there are 2 classes in here. You have your 4 main classes, kind of like how you often do in D&D. The fighter type, the cleric type, the thief type, and the wizard type. So you have those 4 main types, but then you also have these kind of yahoos. So in this, you have the Scotsman, which is basically a barbarian. So he admits that the Scots at the time period during, which this takes place, which is presumed to be in like 1450 something, that the Scots are actually not as backward as they're being portrayed in this, but, for flavor's sake, they are. So they're kind of barbaric travelers, not really travelers so much, but barbarian tribes-like people, and you can involve them in the world as a campaign. But that's the thing, is that you don't just choose a class. You can't just choose any class. You have to roll at least a 9 in the corresponding ability score. So to be a does it actually just call them fighter? I can't remember. I think it does. I want to say yes. I want to say yes. Yeah, I believe it does just call them fighter. To be a fighter, you have to have a 9 in strength. To be a thief, you have to have a 9 in dexterity, etc., etc. Once you get to the barbarian, that's the one that's for constitution. And the Cymri traveler, which is basically a Welsh person that, and there's a particular history with the Cymri traveler for this world. So they're Welsh ethnically, but they are traveling people that have they're rumored, or at least in the Dark Albion setting, it's kind of like confirmed in a way that they have the blood of elves in them. So that's why they have kind of like this innate magical ability in like higher senses and things like that. There's some lore as to why that's the case. Anyway, so ethnic background. Otherwise, select ethnic background. You're probably going to be you're going to be English, which is English. But you can have. It specifically says you can have people of different ethnic descents. So that is a thing. It does say that it's not is common, but it doesn't infer that like there's any kind of inherent discrimination based on that. In my own game, I'm very open to like the character, the player's expression on stuff like that. It's just that if they are Scottish or Welsh, then I'm like, okay, so you're an outsider. It's just if you're an English person, it really doesn't matter what your skin color is. It's the culture. So that's how I run it. Anyway, so next is social class. This is fucking important. Scotsman and the Cymri Traveler do not get a social class. A lot of this stuff I goofed up whenever having my players create characters, and I'm learning as I go. But yeah, they don't. So, but everybody gets a background skill, and a lot of that is based on social class. So, I'll get to that in a little bit. So here's select class. You can only select class based on your ability scores. So that is, that is a thing. Again, I don't know if I went too much into detail on the social class. You have the ex-slave is the very bottom. You have serf. Those are less likely. It has a bell curve. It's a 2d6 roll. So the more likely, and almost everything that everybody has rolled has been a villain, which is a city dweller. So with the city dweller, basically you have a 75% chance to have urban lore, which is basically like knowing your way around a city, being able to find criminals, stuff like that. And if you don't get that, then you have a trade skill. So there's like a D100 chart that you roll on to see what kind of trade skill you have. And the skill system is it's not like Lamentations. I was saying that the system is very similar to Lamentations. It's not like Lamentations. It doesn't use a D6. It uses something that's far more similar to what people are used to with fifth edition. And I've never played third edition, but I'd imagine it would be fairly similar, although the values would be different. So you have basically, it's a D20 roll. You have a difficulty class that usually ranges between 10 and 20. If they have the background skill, then they add that to their D20 roll. And if there's a ability score that's relevant, then you add that to it as well. So, for example, if you have a background skill in baking, and you are trying to bake something, then you roll a d20. Let's say you would add the +1 from your baking skill, and then an additional, maybe your intelligence for knowing how to do it. that kind of thing. So it's fairly simple, and a lot of the other bonuses that you'll get, if not from background skills, will come from your class and level ups and stuff like that. So, anywho, let's see. Here's the spread on modifiers. I like the you cheated. Just a funny little touch. If they don't roll a single ability score above 8, all the ability scores should be re-rolled. I'm actually a little bit nicer about that. See, I had my players roll 2 PCs, and if they rolled like identical-ish scores on both of them, then I let them re-roll. Or if they had nothing but like all of their scores were low except for charisma, then I let them redo it. Charisma is very useful, but basically that means that you can only play as a Cymri traveler. Anyway, and I'll explain why I had them do 2 PCs in a little bit. Partially, it's just because characters die so easily. All right, so it gives a little bit of information about ethnic background. I've already kind of gone over that. Social class, so as you can see, on a 2, you're an ex-slave or a serf. Peasant is more likely. Villain is very likely. And then you have like the creme de la creme that hardly anybody ever gets. I had one person roll knightly nobility. Nobody has rolled lordly or aristocracy, which is kind of sad so far, but we'll see. I haven't checked the Discord to see. I've invited some new players, so we'll see what they get. So as it says, cleric social class is only rolled to determine their origin. So they are not going to, like, let's say they are an ex-slave. The whole idea behind the cleric is that they were chosen by the unconquered sun to be a conduit for miracles, more or less. So it's like the church realized that you have this person that has a propensity for miracles. And then at that point, they're brought into a clerical order. You know, I probably should save that for the class discussion. Shame on me. Shame. Okay, so you have background skills, D100. They're all, you know, based around the concept of medieval trades. So that is fairly, it's very useful. You know, a lot of times you want to have a table for something like that is tailored for your setting. So this is specifically for those kinds of settings. Prior history. Now this is a very, very neat thing. I absolutely love it. If you were to just stop here, you know, and just say, okay, you have your basic character, whatever, you really wouldn't have too terribly much to differentiate between characters, other than, you know, ability scores and their social class. This gives you a little bit of something extra, and sometimes it actually modifies how your social class works. So it's broken up, and you roll a d6 to figure out which subtable you roll on. So basically, there's a 50% chance that you have a kind of bleh basic event. So this has such things as you have an animal companion. You roll to see what it is. You know, so you can have a dog, a wolf, a hawk. So you know you get to start with a pet. And that's fucking cool. You know, you were banished. You're a good fighter. You know, with your fists. You trained, you know, for cavalry, stuff like that. Heartbreak. Your first true love was lost. You know, so these are things that can kind of fuel a bit of thought into what your character's life was like before they joined this effort, whatever the effort may be. So then you have the less rare ones. This is a 33% chance. You know, it's basically you roll a d6. 1 through 3 is the first subtable. 4 and 5 is the second one, and then 6 is the third. So the 6 is only a 17% chance, roughly. And it is where the cool shit happens, the really cool shit. So conscript, you get some pretty neat stuff from that. Encounter with chaos. Chaos is the source of bad shit in the world. So Anybody who's familiar with kind of the old alignment system is familiar with that. Um, let's see, false identity. So you actually tend to get new extra skills from this, or just new resources, new information to run on, seeds, for future occurrences. So subtable C, the less likely one, elf touch, auspicious birth. Auspicious birth kind of helps you. It gives you +1 bonus to all saving throws. That's fucking awesome. Uh, but it also kind of says that there's a chance that you can um, move up a little bit more in your social class than you should be able to. So yeah, these are the real rare ones. Okay, so you have name tables, very useful for people that are just like, I have no idea what to name my character, and I want something that is accurate, fairly. So you have male names, you have female names. These are the English ones. You have, let's see, so upper gentry, knightly class. So this kind of gives you, based on families that would have been more, higher class. You got Scots names, you got Welsh names for the Cymri traveler. Pretty neat. So selecting class, I was right. It is fighter. Yeah. So you have cleric, fighter, magister, thief, Scotsman, and Cymri traveler. It wants you to start at a level 0. So the way that this works, you roll a d6 for your hit points. This is your then modified by your constitution. That is your starting character. So you don't get your class abilities yet. The assumption is that you are nearing the end of whatever training that you're receiving to become your chosen class. So if you're a cleric, that means that you are basically towards the very end of your training in the monastic. It's a Templar order, basically. A lot more martial than a lot of people tend to give credit as far as clerics go. People nowadays tend to associate clerics with, like, oh, I'm just the meek little humble person, but that's not really how old school D&D portrayed them. They were ass kickers, only rivaled by the paladins. So, and the paladins were fairly uncommon. Anyway, fighter, you might have been at the end of, being a squire of some kind if you are of the knightly class. You might just be a good brawler. Who knows? It could be anything. Magister, you are college educated, so you've been to Oxford or the other one. I'm not. I'm sorry. I don't know the England ones too well. Oxford. Oh shit. Yeah. I don't. I'm gonna regret live streaming this later. Okay. So thief. In the tradition of ye old D&D, it's called a thief, not a rogue. How dare you? Scotsman and Cymri. So you get your level 0 hit points. D6 modified by con. I fucked that up and gave them a D4. I think I did that because of DCC, Dungeon Crawl Classics. So that was my bad. But anyway, D6 modified by con. The presumption is they do their level 0 adventure. If they survive, they are a level 1. And then from there, it goes on. So I had the players make level 0s, but I gave in. I'm a bad person. They seem to be very interested in what happens at level 1. So I was like, fuck it. You can make level 1s. So... but the assumption for the game is that you start at level 0. If these characters die, I'm going to have them start at level 0. So, but I kind of caved because I feel like a lot of the really cool shit starts at level 1. And that's usually how games are whenever they have a level 0. Hell, I've done that for 5e and it was fucking awesome. Anyway, languages, you start knowing English. And then for every int modifier that you have over 0, you get an additional language, and it gives you some suggestions on what that might be. So combat bonuses, all level 0s don't have a combat bonus. Combat bonus is basically to hit bonus. It's also your initiative bonus, if I remember correctly. So combat bonus is something that mostly increases for fighters. IRC? We'll see. I know that they have an inherently higher one than everyone else. Okay, saving throws. So this uses a single saving throw mechanic. It is basically everyone starts with 16. Yeah. Base save of 16 modified by charisma. That is your start. So the more God likes you, that's the whole concept behind charisma. The more God likes you, then the more likely you are to be able to endure certain things. And also, each class has particular saving throw bonuses that they get. For instance, save versus poison, save versus magic, stuff like that. So that is how that works. So it's very easy to keep track of. On your character sheet, you just put base saving throw. So let's say I have a +2 in charisma because I'm fucking awesome. So then that would be 14. And let's say I have that auspicious birth one, so I get +1 to saving throws. That means my base saving throw would be 13. And then let's say I'm a Scotsman, that would be a +2 against poison. So that means that whenever I roll, I would just roll a d20, add the +2 because it's poison. And as long as it went over 13, or I can't remember if it meets or exceeds. I can't remember. I'll have to, let's see. Okay, yeah, it's meet or exceeds. So either one. Well, I knew it wasn't just meat. That would be dumb. Anyway, so let's see. Alignment, you have law, neutrality, and chaos. Most people are neutral. Clerics are all law, but no Magisters and no Cymri travelers are law. So this is the fucking Paul Anderson, I think his name is. Spread on it. You've got the cosmic forces. Which side are you on? Most people are not really involved, but if you're a cleric, you're definitely involved. And if you're, evil, doing evil shit, then you are on the chaos side. So, lawful believes in civilization and law and order, justice, religion, religious hierarchy of law, blah, 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 blah. Chaotic believes strongly in freedom, personal choice. Do not place any great inherent value on authority. They may believe in the unconquered sun, but will not necessarily unquestioningly accept the authority of church officials. So these are your heathens. Neutral characters not strongly inclined in any direction. Vast majority of common humans are neutral. So that doesn't mean that they don't obey the law, but they're not invested in this cosmic struggle. All right, age and appearance. If you get over a certain age, you start taking some down negatives. Sex. Okay, so it basically says that, if this were going completely historically accurate, then to be a female would be hard. As far as like being a player character. So here are the concessions that it makes. The fact that you are, if you're a cleric, that means that you were chosen by God, basically. So it doesn't matter if you're a female. If you are something else, then it's like there are it's rare, but it happens. That's kind of the approach that it takes. So if you're just a fighter, maybe you're raised in a mercenary camp is the thing that he mentioned. So it happens. For my games, I'm like, well, they only care about that if my players want them to care about that. So, for instance, I have a player who's a woman, and she said that she would like to kind of do the Mulan thing. So, she's pretending to be a man It's just kind of an effeminate looking man. And that's what she's going with. So, we're going to do that. So that means that because, I've worked that through with my player, that we're kind of going to go with the setting assumption that women have a place. So we're kind of going a little bit more towards the medieval historical perspective without consideration of the cleric thing. Well, we're doing the cleric thing as the system recommends. So, family, it's pretty cool. You roll a d6 to see if your folks are alive. You roll a number of siblings. You like roll again to see how many of them survived childbirth. So it's not very. I have a lot of orphans in my game, and a lot of people with either no siblings or tons of them. So yeah. What else? Wealth and equipment. You roll on that. Is based on your social class. As I said, the Scots and the Cymri don't have a social class, but the Scot will start as a peasant as far as their funds go, and the Cymri traveler will be equipped like a villain. Additional equipment, so you have some very social class dependent stuff. Now here's something to keep in mind. Social class is important. This stretches over into laws. So you can't wear certain colors unless you are of a certain social class. You can't bear weapons and arms unless you're a knight in the city. So that means that most people are going to be traveling without that shit on. Whenever they're getting into the dangerous places outside of civilization, that's whenever they suit up. What else? If you are of the knightly class and you're a fighter, cleric, or thief, you already begin with either brigandine or chain hauberk. That's another thing I like. It uses, from what I understand, more historically accurate armor styles as it's as he understood in the items. Lordly class begins with a sword and a riding horse. Haha, fancy. Oh, damn, you get a hauberk and plate if you are lordly class and a fighter or cleric. So, yeah, skill checks. I already went over that a little bit. So, simple, unlimited time, DC 10. Challenging, limited time, 15. Exceptionally difficult, DC 20. So, the modifiers don't stretch nearly as high in this as they do in like 5th edition. So that means that your chances aren't really as good at success as they would be in 5th edition. But it also means that the DCs aren't going to go as high. So, I mean, in 5th edition, I actually have DCs that go, like over 20 sometimes. You wouldn't really do that on here. What else? It also says that sometimes it's going to be opposed rolls. That's normal for these kinds of systems. Character classes. All right. So clerics. I already kind of talked about that. So whenever you make a cleric, you're already level 0, right? So here are the things that you get for your level 1 shit. So you have to be law aligned and have a wisdom of 9 or higher. You get a hit point D8 modified by con at level 1, and it's +1 each level after unmodified. So let's say that you roll fucking phenomenal. Okay, you get a +3 to your con. You roll a d6 on your first level, so you got 9 hit points to start with. Then you roll again a d8 +3, 20 hit points. All right, so that's at level 2, 20 hit points. Level 3, 21 hit points. Level 4, 22 hit points. Level 5, 20. So, that is how hit points aren't really as they don't climb to the same heights that they do in most systems. Now let's look at the inverse. Let's say you roll like utter shit. So let's say you have a -3 to Constitution. How are you still alive? It is a mystery. But you roll a a 4 or lower, then you're going to have a 1 starting hit point at level 0. So if you take 6 points of damage, you're fucking dead. It basically there is a tiered system after you hit 0, where the lower you're at, the more fatal the blow, which I very much like. So let's say you're knocked to 0, then we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Shame on me. I keep on going ahead. I should probably do a script or something. Anyway, so D8 combat bonus is +1, just straight out +1. So let's say you're rolling an attack with your sword. You're going to roll a D20 and add 1. I believe that you also... No, I don't think that you add your strength on that. Actually, yes, you do. Yes, you do. You add your strength on the... I'm fairly certain you do. I'll have to go back. It'll come up in a little bit, but yeah. So that bonus is going to stay the same unless when you level up... See, here's what happens when you level up. Damn it, I'm jumping ahead again. So when you level up, you get to either pick 1 or roll 2. So you have this table. It's a D10. It's a benefits table. And so you can either pick one of them. Let's say you absolutely positively need to have a new prayer or a new power. So you can pick that. And then you would have to roll on the power table. Or you can roll twice. So rolling twice is going to ultimately end up with having more benefits. However, picking may allow you to somewhat optimize your character sooner. So it's a neat system. It kind of gets rid of the whole concept of optimization being king. So I quite like that quite a lot. So anyway, whenever you create your character and you are level 1 cleric, you roll on the table. And if you get one you don't like, I'm sorry. This means that you don't automatically get to heal. So that is something that you earn, damn it. You earn it. So it is different. Yeah, so you start with one random power. All clerics are literate, so yay, literacy. Okay. Once you've acquired all 8 basic miraculous powers, you will be capable of directly appealing to the divine for assistance in the form of divine intervention. So this is not unlike the level 20 cleric in 5e, where you can just say, God, please help. But getting all 8 powers, that's a fucking ordeal. Because you start with 1, and then unless you choose this or you roll it, which there's let's see, that would be a 20% chance to roll it, then, you're not going to get them every level. So that kind of suggests that you would be at least level 8 or 9. I'm not really a math guy. Yes, I know it's basic edition. Screw you. Okay. So the kinds of things that they get on their cleric benefit table, so they can get a D6 hit points. Notice that is not their D8, so they don't keep on getting D8s. Reduce saving throw DC by 1, so that's like all of it, not just a certain type. Fuck, I forgot. I skipped it. So clerics get a +2 versus any kind of magic for saving throws. So that's pretty neat. Let's see. Roll to gain a new miraculous power or +1 to the prayer check for any one power. So you don't just get to do whatever your power is whenever you want. You have to roll a check for it. If you succeed, it happens. If you really succeed, it happens better. And if you fail, you can't do it again for the rest of the day. So There is a risk reward system there. I very much love it. It's very similar to Dungeon Crawl Classics, except for it doesn't have the built-in system where you build up disapproval from your god, and then you have to like make it up to them. However, whenever you do a divine intervention, if you ever get that far, the moment that you do it, you have to go on a holy mission. So you really, really, really better mean it if you're calling for God's help. +1 to prayer check for any single prayer, for single power. +1 to theology skill, or +1 to demonology skill, or gain 1 new language. Pretty neat. So theology, it has its uses. Demonology, I would assume that demonology would help you in uncovering the names of certain demons, which might be useful for magisters, because if you know their names, then you will have an increase in your potential for summoning them. Let's see. Combat bonus is 1 type of weapon. Very important. So this means you're probably going to be focusing on 1 type. And really, the type of weapon doesn't really have a huge effect on this. There are some, things here and there, but most of it's just damage. If you get a pike or a polearm, you can stand in the back row. And if somebody, but if you have a polearm and somebody charges you, which charging is a mechanic for this that's really neat. Basically, if you're a certain distance away, anybody can just do a charging attack, just go, ah! Then they get some bonuses to their, to hit, I believe, and some like downsides to their AC, if I remember correctly. But it lets them do more to close the gap and still get to attack. But if you're doing that to somebody who has a pike or something to that effect, like a reach polearm, then they get an opportunity attack against you. So bad days. And I think they get a serious bonus to it too. So they're probably going to hit you. Pretty rough. So then you have saving throws versus magic or any other type of save. So yeah, if you have a particular problem with fucking breath weapons, then you can choose a +1 in that, or you can just get another +2 against magic. And holy shit, that is good. I like it. But then again, magic is not terribly common, so to me, balancing act. All right, fighters. Oh God, this is the worst time for the. I don't even know if you can hear that, but there's a car alarm. Shut up! Shut up! I guess I'll take this time to see if there's been any comments. Looks like we are still going. Cool. Okay. Okay, it stopped. All right, so fighters. Requirement strength plus 9 plus. Hit points D10. So pretty nice. They get a +2 per level thereafter. So they will, have a little bit more of a climb after. It still sucks because there's always the possibility that when you roll your character that you roll your D10 and you get like a fucking 1. I'm horrible. I let my players re-roll 1s for HP. I'm bad. But yeah, it's possible. So you could be a fighter with like fucking no HP really. Combat bonus +2. So you get to use that whenever you make dexterity checks. That goes a long way. Not dexterity. Initiative. Because whenever you roll initiative, you don't roll a D20, you roll a D6. Anyway. So combat bonus is +2. So they are more likely to hit. They also have a very special mechanic where, and this is from what I understand, kind of like an OD&D thing, or at least it's very old school. When fighting multiple opponents of 1 level or hit die, fighters can attack a number of opponents equal to their level, maximum of the number of opponents available within 10 feet of them each round. So let's say you have a level 4 fighter and you have 4 level 1 characters or 1 hit die creatures within melee range. They can attack all 4 of them. There's a caveat. multiple attacks in Lion and Dragon are not carried away in the same beat. Okay, so you have 6-second rounds, if I remember correctly. I know a lot of that is if I remember correctly, but I felt like I wanted to do this sooner rather than later, so that my players could potentially listen and learn more about the system. Anyway, so you have a 6-second round, and you roll a d6 on initiative. I do not believe that's a coincidence. So basically, the idea is that this second you're doing your first attack. So let's say you roll a 5 on initiative. Okay, so you decide I'm going to do all 4 attacks. So you do your first one on 4. You do your second one on 3. You do your third one on 2, and you do your last one on 1. And then I assume that after that, it's kind of like you just kind of do both if you have extras. I'm not really sure. I would probably rule it that way. I'm not going to deprive somebody of their attacks because otherwise it would get complicated. Either you just say nah, you don't get it, or it bleeds over into the next round, which I'm not going to do that. So some people say that they feel like that is too much to keep up with. I kind of like it, and I might even rule that if a player the player is responsible for doing it, just rolling it on the next beat, and if they don't, then they miss it. But that's because I'm a dick. So saving throw bonuses 0. Damn. Well, at least that means it's easy to calculate, right? So they have to choose to either use that special ability and not attack the higher level opponents. So notice that it has to be 1 level. Basically, this is for the minions, the weaklings. They can clear out the field of these bastards. Or they can attack the higher level creature. Or attack normally without the special ability. So they add half their level to all melee and range damage. So they do more damage. This is a good thing. This is part of niche protection. So they hit more, they get to attack more, and they do more damage. So fighters are your ass kickers by far. On their benefits table, they have it's a D12 instead of a D10. So you have more hit points. They get a D8 instead of a D6 like the Cleric had. Reduced saving throw DC by 1, +1 to all combat bonus. So theoretically, let's see. I'm not good at percentages, but I'm going to try this. Okay, that would be the same as, so that's like a 17% chance whenever they roll on this chart to get a +1 combat bonus with every weapon. So starting with that 2, that means that theoretically, they're going to be getting way up there eventually. Or there's a chance of combat bonus with 1 type of weapon. Who would want that? Nobody. Get this one. This one better. 7, horsemanship +1 maneuvers on horseback. So this is something that would be cumulative. So if you keep on rolling a 7, I'm so sorry, but you're just really good at using a horse. +1 to parrying with a shield when fighting defensively, partial or total defense. So this is very specific, but there is another feature that he added, which is parrying, where you can sacrifice some of your attack capabilities, and it can be pretty serious, like pretty major, in order to be able to fight defensively, so that you can defend against attacks better. If you have a shield, you do a better job of it, and if you're a fighter, you do even better. Fighters and clerics are better with armor also. That's something I'll get to in a little bit. Okay, so they can get +1 to initiative. I believe that initiative you add your combat bonus, so that's kind of also a consolation prize. I'd rather just get that. If I'm wrong, I'm going to look stupid. But that's what I thought it was. We'll see in a little bit, because it'll get into those rules. +2 to 1 type of saving throw. Not bad. That's good because they don't have any kind of +2s to anything for saving throws inherently. Or +1 with for extra one plus one extra attack with one type of weapon. So you have to specify. So if you are someone who is using the sword and you want to use the sword more, then roll 12 and choose the sword. But if you pull out a dagger, sorry, no extra attacks. All right. Magisters. Oh my god. I love Magisters in this game, but people might not agree with me on this. Like I said, they are not wizards. They do not throw around fireballs. These are like arcane lore experts. They are lore experts in general, not even just arcane. They basically it's random. It's kind of like the miraculous power. It's random what you start with. So let's just dive into it. So int 9 plus D4 hit points. So they're a little squishy, little squishy friends. Plus 1 hit point thereafter. No combat bonus. No. So that's they don't need to be fighting in close quarters very much. I would avoid it if at all possible. Saving throw bonus +1 versus magic. So the cleric actually has +2 versus magic. The cleric is kind of like the chaos fighter, so it kind of makes sense that they would be more defensive against magic. But so you just get a +1 versus magic. All right. So special. All Magisters start with the languages lore. So we'll look at lores in a minute. All Magisters also begin the game with an understanding of how summoning works and get to add their level to summoning checks. Non-Magisters can attempt to summon as well, but only add their int modifier. So this, my friends, is where the Magister gets very sexy. So the demon summoning. Basically, I'll just save it until we get to it. Benefits table, D4 hit points modified by con, so you can get a little bit less squishy boy. Reduce saving throw DC by 1. So that's just overall. Roll 1 new magical skill. Very nice. And there's a pretty good chance of that. That's a 20% chance. You either get a magical skill for 20% chance, or actually this is 30% chance right here. Roll 1 new lore or +1 bonus to existing lore. So lores are also very important because, oh, come on. Go away. I know I'm exposed. Okay. +2 to 1 type of saving throw. So it's kind of restricted, but that's fine. +1 bonus to magic check with 1 favored magical skill or for summoning checks. All right. So very specific shit. Now to the good part, lores. So lores are knowledge. Derp. So you need to have the lore in order to be able to use this type of ability. So let's look at them. So you have alchemy, puffery. So this is kind of like your lowbrow alchemy. It is lab-based that is not as such magical, involves no invocation or spiritual powers. So you just make concoctions. Alkahest, very cool. I love Alkahest in this game. It's basically just very acidic. And you can, use it to get through shit or hurt people. Asbestos, Fool's Gold, etc. Basic rolls on DC 10 can be done to recognize standard alchemical notes or other common concoctions or materials. DC 15 checks are required to create alchemical concoctions correctly, and those are often penalized by preparation modifiers based on the difficulty of the substance. It's very detailed. Whenever it comes up, look up the rules. It's not really that hard because, here's the thing. If you have a Magister, a player playing a Magister, they need to understand that they are the behind-the-scenes support team more than anything. They make awesome shit happen outside of the moment, and so whenever people use their awesome shit, then it's just wonderful. Astronomy, cartography, and navigation. So this can help them find their way, determine locations, directions, make maps, plot routes, or to tell time. Very neat. Court politics and etiquette. So this helps them become better at navigating the intricacies of court matters. Very useful for political games. Um, and the Magister is inherently okay. The Magister is usually inherently educated. It says that if they are a female character, that more likely than not, because females in the assumed setting are not able to go to university, that they would probably have learned their stuff through witchcraft. So, um, yeah, but other than that, magisters are university educated, so they have like a certain level of prestige about them. Apothecary, so you can make some plant-based awesome shit that can help the party. History, chance of knowing historical detail. And this would be things that are not well known. So if it's something that is commonly known, then they already know it, obviously. And it has some kind of rules on where that goes. Law. So you have religious or secular. Whenever you roll this, you choose religious or you choose secular. So you can have a magister that is a good lawyer. This comes in handy because if you are arrested, then there are mechanics for trials. So good stuff. Medicine. So medicine is used to treat diseases, ailments. You can, like determine what kind of herbal cures somebody needs. You can tell if something is like if they're poisoned or something. You can tell if it's natural or if it's magical or a curse or something like that. Then you have natural philosophy, catch-all lore covering the knowledge of medieval sciences, includes mathematics, geometry, physics, basic biology. Someone this lore could use it in checks to solve puzzles, identify uncommon creatures, or use basic knowledge of things like chemistry. So this is it should be self-explanatory, but lore is just knowledge. Whenever you roll this is just what kind of knowledges you got. Everybody starts with languages, but if you roll it again, then you get more stuff on that. Occultism covers all knowledge of magical subjects, includes knowledge about different forms of magic, the history of magic, identifying monsters or magical objects. There's some mechanics on that. All right. So magical skills. This is where you kind of get closer to the territory of, like the wizard that we know and love. So you have a magical skill chart. You roll a d6. You can get either astrology, cures, banishing, battle magic, astrological talismans, or true alchemy. We'll get into that stuff more later. So notice that true alchemy is not the same as puffery. Puffery is the basic shit. Basic bitch alchemy. True alchemy lets you create shit like golems and not like Lord of the Rings, but like golems. I'm a big clay motherfucker and I'm gonna smash. All right, thieves. All right, dexterity 9+. D4 hit points. So that is kind of different. If you play 5e, they're usually a D8. If you play other OSR stuff, I think they're often a D6. So thieves are a little bit more fragile in this system than they are otherwise, but they are not meant to be frontline fighters so much. They're not incompetent at fighting. They get a +1 for combat bonus. They are going to make saves better, reduce saving throw DC by 1. So they start at 15 rather than 16. Thieves begin with +1 bonus to all of the following thief skills: pickpockets, open locks, find and remove traps, sneak, listen, and climb. So these are things that, really anybody should be able to try, but they're going to do better. I say anybody should be able to try, but the way that I would probably run that is that they are going to be able to do things with limited time Whereas if you have somebody who's not a thief who is trying to pick a lock and they don't have unlimited time, then they are going to have like a very hard roll. But for a thief, I would probably say it's a little bit easier. Well, I'd say it's actually probably substantially easier. The plus one, I'm not sure that I think that is substantial. Well, but it does get better as they level. So I guess it works because the idea is that as they continue along their thiefdom, then they will improve on that. So other than that, my vision is clouding. +4 bonus to surprise to hit was for surprise attacks rather than a +2. So that tells you, normally whenever you do surprise attacks, you get a +2. So they get a +4. On a successful hit, it's a backstab and they do double damage. But on the benefits table, there is oh, it's up here. All right, if they roll a 12 on their benefits table, I believe that this is the same mechanic that's in Lamentations. Double damage can become triple becomes quadruple, then goes up to... Okay, quintuple is the max. After that, it says or gain plus d6 hit point. All right, so you can choose if you say, fuck it, I don't care about sneak attacks, I want more hit points, you can do that. Other than that, they get their d6 hit points, so that's actually more than they normally get, which is pretty nice. Reduce saving throw DC by 1, +1 to any 2 basic thief skills. So, there's that's a 16.5% chance that they are going to get more +1s. And it doesn't say that you can't stack it. So you can't just say, I'm going to spend 2 in sneaking or 2 in picking locks or pickpocketing, so yeah, that's going to go up fairly quickly-ish, maybe. +2 to bonus in urban lore, which, remember, that is something that you can get as a villain because you're maybe a mischievous citizen. Or wilderness lore, if you're a bandit. Or court lore in noble courts. Or +1 language, so a lot of options there. +2 bonus to skill in appraising goods or forging documents or disguise. Those are some things that you can get in prior events. So, +2 bonus in artifact lore, knowledge of unusual objects, historical or magical. +1 bonus in any one type of weapon. So it's not terribly common that your combat bonus is going to get above 1, but it is possible. +2 saving throws versus one type of save. Poison, area effects, magic, etc. All right, so that's the thief. Cymri. So now we're finally to the oddball classes. So the Cymri are the same ethnic stock as the Welsh, but use the old name for their people. Cymri meaning the folk. They're not barbarians, but rather... I'm sorry, my vision is getting cloudy. I'm doing this too much. Okay. Travel around in caravans. So they're basically gypsies, more or less. Highly distrusted by ordinary society because they wear bright clothing, are said to be sexual libertines, and worship no gods, and because many of them are known to have skill in magic and a sixth sense, a trait they say descends from elven blood. At the same time, many Cymri are valued for their variety of skills. So they're jacks of all trade, having some knowledge of thieving skills, some ability in combat, and some ability with magic. They are more or less bards, but they come in with the whole, and I'm trying to put this in like 5e understanding for people. They're basically like bards without the inherent magic song system bullshit, and with the whole tiefling vibe, if you're into that. So charisma 9+, d6 modified by con, +1 every level after. So it's kind of mid-range, +1 combat bonus, not bad. Saving throw reduces by 1, so they're already going to be higher in charisma than most people. So this means that their base saving throw is going to be nice. +2 to checks involving noticing things. This is equivalent to, in the olden days, you'd roll a d6 to see if an elf notices something. Or is that a d6? Yeah, it was a d6, I'm pretty sure. Hidden doors, ambushes, etc., due to their sixth sense. So it's pretty nice. They begin with the knowledge of summoning, can add their level to summoning checks, just like the Magisters do. Now, the Cymri is not going to have the educational background that a Magister is going to have, so they are they fall on the more witchcrafty side. I very much enjoy the way that the summoning works, because there's kind of the vibe of you can do it the official way with all of the proper channels, or you can slaughter some goats and maybe some humans and do a better job. Yeah. Anyway, benefits table, saving throw, hit points, magical skill, combat bonus, one specific weapon, +2 bonus to any thief skill. So now you can see this is where their jack of all trade stuff goes. Magical skill, so that's part Magister, that's part Thief, also part Magister, Thief, Magister. Choose any of the results above, so from 1 to 10, so pretty nice shit. Scotsman. Northern barbarians, their harsh environment made them brutally tough, and they are also competent fighters, though lacking some of the finesse of fighter-class warriors who have been trained through more civilized techniques. All right, so they are beefy boys and girls. D12 hit points modified by con at first level, +2 thereafter, kind of like the fighter. Unlike the fighter, they only have a +1 to combat bonus. Saving throw bonuses reduce saving throw bonus or base by 1. Nice. So 15 instead of 16. Plus a +2 on save versus poisons. Very nice. Kind of dwarfish, honestly. Scotsmen begin with +2 in wilderness lore. So they are your survival experts. Scotsmen have a berserker attack. They can subtract 2 points of AC for the next round to get a +1 bonus to either attack or damage if they hit, not both. The attack cannot be combined with defensive combat. So they have their own kind of way of doing things, so they can hit more commonly or do more damage. A little bit of tactical depth there for people that enjoy that. So you have a very strong chance to get another D12 hit points. So they are really, really beefy. That's a 30% chance to get another D12 of hit points when you level up, which, I mean, you get to try twice if you roll for it. Reduce saving throw DC by 1, +1 wilderness lore, +1 combat bonus to one type of weapon. So as you can see, they are not really as competent fighters as fighters, but they get the job done, and they're going to be able to take a lot of hits as long as they don't roll terribly on their hit points. +2 saving throw versus poison, or +1 any other category, but it looks like you need to choose. Yeah, you need to choose. +1 berserker attack. You can subtract another AC to hit or damage. So basically, it looks like the more you sacrifice, the better the payout, because at first you have to sacrifice 2 AC, but after that it's just 1 for 1. So, and then +2 bonus to damage with one type of melee weapon. So they can do a lot of damage if they happen to get that benefit. Pardon-moi. Okay. Miracles and magic. So here you have the cleric, Miracles. So they do a prayer check. There are checks for everything. You don't just get stuff. I love that. I really don't like that in 5th edition D&D. It's just like, spell slot, it happens. Yeah, boy. It's just a matter of how much it happens or if they dodge it. So, yes. So whenever you first get this, you roll a d8 to see which one you get. And then you're stuck with it, you motherfucker. All right, so blessing. You can add shit to So DC 13. So remember, they add their cleric level to their roll and their wisdom. So let's say you're level 1 cleric and you have a +1 to wisdom. That's kind of normal, either a 0 or 1. Either way, you can still be a cleric, even if you have only a 0 modifier. You probably just should think about something else. But anyway, so that would mean you would have, like a +1 to your roll. So that would be a... Oh gosh, math. 40% chance of success, roughly. So not terribly high. But if you succeed, they get a +4 bonus to single D20 based roll at a moment of their choosing, which must be no later than by the next sunset. That is a long time. So, unlike the cantrip in 5th edition, guidance, where it has to be within a minute while you maintain concentration, you can just slap this down on somebody, at the beginning of the day, and just let it play out whenever it needs to happen. Plus, it can be applied to any D20 roll of their choosing. The roll must presumably be related to the purpose for which the blessing was invoked. Oh, never mind. I take it back. If a natural 20 is rolled, the subject receives a +4 to a single die roll as above, and a +1 to all other D20 related to the objective until the next sunset. So the way that would play out is the cleric might say, bless you, may your travels be safe, or something like that. I would do something vague like that. So that way, the next time that you have to make a saving throw against some kind of thing that happens, then, you get to use it on that. So yeah. Blessing can also be done over water and food with DC 15 and 1 minute of prayer to purify it of any disease or toxin. A cleric can do so with 1 meal's worth of food or with 1/2 gallon worth of water. So if they produce holy water, but you need 3 clerics, only one of which needs to have blessing power. So special fount in a sanctified temple. But it's nice. Enough holy water can be produced to fill 10 vials per full day of work. When thrown or sprayed on a demon or undead creature, does D8 points of damage. That's pretty good. 10 vials. Anyway, divine inspiration. So let's see. DC 13. So really about the same chances there. It's not easy, but it's doable. And remember, it doesn't cost you anything. It's just that if it fails, you don't get to do it again until the next day. After 1 round of vocal prayer, they can grant a holy confidence to 1 person, including themselves. Anyone affected must be within 100 feet of the cleric and must be able to hear them. This grants all affected +1 bonus to attack rolls and saving throws for 1 round per cleric level. On a DC 18 check, the person affected will also be immune to supernatural fear for the duration. If they were already affected by supernatural fear, the fear is dispelled. On a natural 20, the cleric can either double the number of people affected, or the bonus, or the duration. So there's a lot of versatility here. And I love the different levels of outcomes. So it's very similar to Dungeon Crawl Classics if you've played that, but with this you might be able to get away with not having to reference the book as much. Whereas with Dungeon Crawl Classics, on your character sheet next to your spells, you put the page number for the spell, so you can go to the fucking table and see what you got. Because that one is like every degree of success, every point that you roll higher has a different outcome, more or less. I love DCC, if you can't tell. Holy Light. So this is like the light spell. DC 14 prayer check. They can create a light like natural sunlight. So it's a little bit more potent in a 60-foot radius around the holy symbol. This light will harm creatures that are vulnerable to sunlight. The effect lasts for 10 minutes per cleric level. On a DC 20 roll, the light is so powerful, it does 1 point of damage per round to all creatures of chaos in range, 2 points to demons or the undead. On a natural 20, the duration and damage is doubled. So, very, very cool. As you can probably tell, these miracles they're something. They're not, these are not just like cantrips. They've got some oomph to them, and the more you accrue, the more versatility you have as a cleric to do these tasks, and it gives you more flavor. And keep in mind, the cleric is already a competent fighter, so not as good as the fighter, but they can kick some ass. All right, holy weapon. Cleric can attempt to place a blessing on a weapon, shield, or armor. This is done by a prayer check against a DC of 15. Weapons have a +1 to hit and damage, and considered magical for the purposes of harming supernatural creatures. Armor or shields will gain +1 to armor class, which goes a long way because shields inherently only get a +1, I believe, unless you're a fighter or a cleric. This will last until the next sunset. That's a long fucking time. But it is a DC 15, so it's kind of up there. If the cleric beats a DC of 20, he can choose to either that is very presumptuous. I'm just fucking with you. Choose to either increase the bonus to +2 or increase the duration to 1 week. 1 week! That's fucking sweet, dude. Sorry. If the cleric beats a DC 25, it's possible. You get up there in levels and you have a high enough bonus. He's using the neutral he. Whatever. You know what I'm talking about. Can do both of the previous effects. A natural 20 doubles the duration. So notice, all a natural 20 does is double the duration. This means that the DC 25 is better. Ultimately, like, it stacks. So, magic weapons, armor, or holy relics cannot be blessed. Laying hands. So I did something I might regret, and I told all the clerics that they can start with laying hands. I might regret that later. We'll see. But it's not like the easiest thing to do. So 13 prayer check, success healing 1d6 +1 hit points, poisons, diseases, including blindness, deafness, or madness, or curses can be healed with DC 18 check. Note that this will cease further damaging effects of these conditions, but will not recover damage done thus far. I assume that this is a reference to madness, curses, poisons. That would make sense, I think, because blindness, what would be the point in casting it if you can't get rid of it, if that makes sense? So, I would assume that this would be, as far as like, ongoing, gradual effects that get worse. So I would imagine that disease would be one of those, because if you're diseased long enough, then maybe you start losing strength in certain capacities, or you might have to have like a leg amputated or something. Who knows? Sanctuary. Natural of 20 or a roll above DC 25. They can either restore all lost hit point damage or completely cure the effects, including permanent damage, of any poison, injury, or curse. Nice. Sanctuary. So, praying for 1 round, DC 13. They can shroud themselves in divine protection so that no one may attack him or attempt to physically harm him through other means. Magic, for example. If creatures have any other opponent to reasonably attack, they must attack that other opponent unless they are of a higher level than the cleric, in which case they may attack the cleric if they succeed. It's kind of convoluted. Saving throw against magic. Okay, so it still makes it hard, So if you have other, party members that you have around you and they are higher level than you, then there's a potential that they might still end up attacking the cleric, but they have to save against it. If there's no other reasonable opponent to attack besides a cleric, then even foes of equal or lower hit die may attempt a saving throw to attack the cleric. The sanctuary lasts for 1 round per level. On a natural 20, the duration is doubled. The effect is immediately canceled, however, if the cleric takes any aggressive action. So this is whenever cleric goes into nice mode. With a DC 20 check and praying for 10 minutes, a cleric can create an area that is sanctified. So I like that this is dual purpose. If they succeed, an area of 5-foot radius per level of the cleric will be under the same effect as a sanctuary spell above. This effect cannot be moved after being established. Any supernatural creature that wishes harm, or creature that wishes harm to the cleric, cannot enter the area if they are of equal or lesser hit die of the cleric. If they are higher level, then they may cross if they make a saving throw versus magic. In either case, the cleric will also immediately become aware of someone reaching the border of the area. So this is something that you can kind of give yourself a place to rest. What is the duration? It's sanctified. Lasts until the next sunrise. Yeah. So this is your you can sleep comfortably ish kind of scenario. I said the word scenario. I had this one video I made where I said that like 500 fucking times. Okay. Turn undead. This is the thing that you expect to get with every cleric, along with laying hands, and not necessarily. You got to roll it. Everybody knows how turning undead works. And this is really not much different. There's varying levels of it. And you can, higher you roll, the more you can do, basically, and the more potent it is. And it can destroy them effectively if you roll high enough or if you're powerful enough. Divine Intervention. So once you've gotten all of the other ones... Oh, I was about to say, there's 8 of them. Okay. Visions. A cleric can sense the presence of any supernatural chaos, including creatures or objects, within a 60-foot radius. So this is very similar to the Paladin's... what is it called? It's the feature, a Divine Sense in 5th edition. By a similar roll, also DC 13, the cleric can likewise detect the presence of holy people. Nice. Objects or magical effects. After, alternatively, with 10 minutes of prayer, cleric can, on a 15 roll, receive some kind of a vision in answer to a question. Okay, so you can choose to do it this way and try and get, it's basically like augury. The answer will usually either provide some kind of glimpse of potential future events, or answer in the form of yes, no, or wheel, woe, or provide some sense of direction or sign of divine approbation. A natural 20 will provide a more detailed and useful vision or enhance the range of magical detection. Okay, so those are all 8 of the miraculous powers. If you have all 8 of them, you can do a divine intervention, which basically you can beg for God to show up. It's a DC 22. It has to be a cause that is significant. Lives of believers in danger, including the cleric's own, is always sufficient to fulfill the requirement, and must be somehow directly further the cause of the faith. So you can't just use this to say, God, please help me with my diarrhea. It is also to benefit another... If it is also to benefit another person or people, the person or people must be members of the faith or essential to the divine interests of the faith. So this means that you can use this to the benefit of somebody in your group, assuming that they are contributing to your divine mission of some kind. Because the divine power can manifest in a variety of ways, it is up to the GM exactly how it works. There's a lot of recommendations here. Possible effects include moving a person or object, short-range telekinesis, flight, levitation, teleportation, causing an impressive visual auditory effect. Be it why would causing fear, friendliness, or confusion? Okay, yeah. Inspiring a group of people equal to the cleric's level. For example, to gain +4 bonus in all D20 rolls for the duration of a battle. That's pretty fucking sweet, I got to say. Alter the weather, nice. Granting one or more people great speed or strength for a specific task. Make the unseen seen to the cleric. Smite a group of enemies. Oh, yes. Smite me, holy smiter. Or to strike down a single nemesis, requiring a saving throw versus magic to avoid instant death. Oh, nice. Anytime a cleric fails the prayer check on a divine intervention, you not only cannot call for intervention again in that day, you must also engage in purification and prayer for a full day before he can attempt to use divine intervention again. Shame on you. On the other hand, if he succeeds in a divine intervention, the cleric must perform a divine mission, which will come to him in a dream or a vision the night after he called on divine aid. To determine the nature of the divine mission, you must roll in the following table. There are a bunch of different ones that you can have that vary in severity, but it gives you a little bit of leeway. You got to finish your task before you go to sleep, and then after that, you're going on a mission. You're going on a trip in your favorite rocket ship. Losing clerical powers. Any cleric who violates their faiths, their oaths of obedience, commits some grave act against the faith, they lose all their powers. They can redeem themselves, but usually only through extreme acts of penitence, a sincere feeling of remorse, and the performance of some great deed in the service of the unconquered sun. It's up to the GM. Yeah, so that is the cleric. I would say in a nutshell, but that is the entire nutshell. All right. Magister magical techniques. So here you have information on summoning. There's a lot of very specific information here. Anybody can try to summon, but you're probably going to fail and be possessed by a demon and become their plaything. So it has the system on how to do it. All that kind of fun stuff. The real goodies are right here. So you make a summoning check to summon a demon. D20 plus int modifier plus Magister or Cymri level. If the summoner belongs to one of these classes, this can be modified by aforementioned conditions described above. So these are kind of like a summary of things that you can do to help the process. So performed inside a Magister's temple, +4 bonus. So Magister's temple has to be created or pre-existing, and it requires assets to do this. This is part of why I was saying that the Magister is not a short-term game class, really, unless you're going to give them assets to begin with, because this is stuff that you build over time. The Magister is somebody that people invest in so that they can do fantastic things over a campaign. So this is why Lion and Dragon is fantastic for long games, partially. The Magister just in general is, and the Cymri by extension. Okay, so failing to use the proper tools is a -2 penalty. So that tells you if you are so fucking desperate that you're trying to summon a demon just right off the bat, it's going to be a DC 16 automatically. Or, that's the minimum. That's a commoner demon. You're talking about DC 30. Look at that shit. Anyway, summoner creating summon without proper preparation is also a -2 penalty. So actually it's a -4 if you don't have your proper shit ready. It's because proper preparation is like a day of like fasting and various other shits. Okay, increased by the following. If the summoner creates a special version of the demon's sigil made out of precious metals. So there's a cost here. I can't remember what the L stands for. I think it's liar, but I'm not an historian. To a maximum of +5. So you pour some money in it. That's a lot more chance of success. If the summoner conducts a blood sacrifice of an animal, +1 per total hit die of animals slain to a maximum of +4. This is where I was saying witchcraft gets sexy. if you kill yourself some goats and shit, then you got a +4. If you do a blood sacrifice of an intelligent creature, +1 hit die for creatures, no limit. No limit. So theoretically, let's say you find a chaos cult and you capture like 5 cultists. Okay. They are bad. The cleric, I don't see why they wouldn't be okay with a Cymri using cultists, chaos cultists that are part of the effort of chaos to do a human sacrifice in order to summon a demon and bind it to service, if it's in the right context. So that, I know that's a lot of ifs, ands, or buts, but I think that's an interesting dynamic, the way that plays out. But yeah, this is kind of where witchcraft can get very sexy. Is you can just like slay a whole bunch of people and use that to fuel your demon binding. Making blood sacrifices a demon is a highly chaotic act. Doing so will automatically lead to alignment change of the character of any character not chaotic and will give a penalty to subsequent saving throw against domination. Okay, so you do have to worry about being dominated. Difficulty level of summoning check to succeed, and the summoning depends on the power level of the demon. That's kind of self-explanatory. It gets pretty fucking ugly when you go up that high, but Lord help you. You'd have to be probably like at least a level 10 cleric to try and pull that shit off, because even then you'd have to roll like a 20. Well, not necessarily if you have all your ducks in a row. If a character fails in their summoning attempt, so you got to do the summon and then you got to do the binding. That's 2 different rolls. They may attempt to do so again no less than 24 hours later at a -4 penalty to the attempt. If they fail a second time, they cannot attempt to summon that particular demon again until the PC gains a level. So you do have a limit to how many times you can try, other than just the fact that things can get ugly if you try and fail. Well, actually, I guess it only gets ugly if you summon them and you don't bind them. If the summoning is successful, the summoner must then engage in a battle of wills with the demon. Through ritualized commands, they must seek to obtain dominion over the demon and oblige it to swear agreement to perform a service. That is why you do it. You don't just summon demons to attack people necessarily, but there's all kinds of cool shit that demons can do for you. So to get it to swear agreement, they must succeed on a saving throw. Versus magic, there is a penalty to the saving throw based on the rank of the demon. So you summon it, and then you have this difficulty class. No. You have to make a saving throw with this penalty. Okay. So let's say your saving throw is your base saving throw is a 15. So you already have a +1 charisma or whatever. So this means that if you're trying to summon a lord, you have a -2 penalty to your saving throw that you make. That means you have to roll a 17 or higher to bind them. So you want to have somebody who is stronger against magic. That would include a cleric or a magister, or a Cymri potentially. And you probably want to have somebody who has a little bit more charisma, if at all possible, all things being optimal and whatnot. You also want to put all your ducks in a row so that way you can do everything you can to stack it. Either case, the summoner must use, if the summoner used blood sacrifice for the summoning, there's a penalty incurred to the saving throw control. The penalty is -2 in the case of an animal sacrifice, -4 in human sacrifice. That's really not that steep, to be honest. Well, it depends on if it allows you to use. Yeah, that's just for the summoning. So the actual binding, that would be hard. So that would mean that somebody who is not using the proper channels and who is using witchcraft, doing some kind of sacrifices and shit in the middle of nowhere, they're more likely to be possessed by a demon. So that might be why the church is kind of like, please don't do that. On the other hand, a summoner who has been assiduously devout to the unconquered sun and is engaging in summoning in order to serve the cause of law gets a +2 bonus to this saving throw to dominate. He gets a further +2 in addition to his devotion if he has if in pursuit of the faith of if he has slain chaos cultists or the undead. An additional +2 if he has ever slain a demon of any kind. Thus, the total bonus for piety can be as high as +6. So clerics are very good about this. Not just clerics, but summoners. If they're good boys, then they have better chances. Finally, if the summoner is performing a ritual inside a Magister's temple or holy site, they receive +4 bonus to the saving throw. So that still matters. Nice. If the initial saving throw fails, the summoner then faces a decision. He can attempt to banish the demon or make another attempt to dominate the demon. Banishing the demon requires the same type of check as the initial summoning. Attempting to dominate involves the same saving throw, but with a -1 penalty. Assuming unsuccessful attempts, the summoner may continue to attempt either choice, but every time a subsequent effort or domination attempt, the saving throw incurs a further cumulative -1 penalty. So if it's 4 times, blah, blah, blah. If at any time in either the banishing or domination attempt, the summoner rolls a natural 1. So 5% chance here, y'all. 5%. They end up being possessed by the demon, who will then have control over the PC and use the PC to do its bidding. This may involve freeing the demon into the world. It just depends on what they want. So it is a dangerous prospect. Even the most stacked summoning ritual still has a 5% chance. That's pretty serious. Yeah, so it's cool. If you dominate them, then you can ask them to do a task. And it has details on what that is. Depending on what rank of demon you summon, they have varying power levels, numbers of powers. So the powers kind of give them the things that they're able to do. Condemn, control reptiles, calm sailing, control spiders, dangerous journey. You can do all kinds of shit to people. So they have their own powers that they have at their disposal. So it doesn't mean that you can just tell any demon to do anything and they can do it. They have to be kind of predisposed to it. Okay. Infertile. That's rough. Got a demon names table. Magical skills. So you have astrology. So astrology. Now note that this isn't just the lore. This is the magical skill. Can be used for judging the fortunes of an individual, only if they know the precise date and place of their birth. Making a successful prediction of a person's overall fortunes is only a standard DC 10 check. So there's a lot of stuff they can do there for predictions, which the GM facilitates. This isn't a story-based game where players have that capacity to just make stuff up. Cures. So let's see. Is there anything extra they can do for that? I felt like they could do more with it. Actually, no. There is a supplement that he made that has more astrological stuff that you can do. Highly recommend it. I'll probably go over it sometime. All right, cures. So make variety of magical cures. The first time it's taken, you can choose any 2 cures. You get to choose. You don't have to roll. Every subsequent time this technique is taken, you can choose 1 extra. So you can cure disease. You can, is that hit points? Yeah, this helps you recover more quickly whenever you're resting. Remove infection. Cure madness. Cure blindness. Cure hunger. Cure hunger. Why not just eat something? Oh, okay. Uh, 20 shilling plate. Place a piece of bread. Burn incense. While reciting magic words, bread must be wrapped in a white cloth and kept clean and dry. If they succeed, small pieces of the bread will be enough to... Okay, it's kind of like Goodberry. Ha, nice. Satisfy the hunger of up to 7 people. Small pieces of bread will sub 7 people for 1 day per level of the caster. That is to say, a bread made by level 3 Magister will count as 21 rations. Bread will remain unspoiled for 3 days plus 1 day per level of the Magister. It is just like Goodberry, but better. Which is good because it takes a little bit more to get. Banishing. Banishing is a power. Okay, good point. You don't start with that power. So, yeah. Banishing, purifying, and protecting an area from magical forces, from certain supernatural entities. There are various techniques of banishing, some more effective than others. In emergencies, certain hand gestures and words of power can be used to banish supernatural forces, such as whenever you fail to dominate a demon. Rituals using incense and chanting can clear an area of magical effects or even temporarily suppress magical effects. Each time this is selected, they gain the use of 1 new banishing technique, must be learned in the order shown. Oh, so you have to go in order. So you start with circle banishing. This is a lot of detail. I'm not going to go into that much detail for this, but circle banishing is a thing. Dispel effects in the circle. Entities will not be able to enter the space without being expressly granted entry. So that's how you protect yourself whenever you're going to be doing a summoning ritual. So you'll probably want to have somebody who has at least 1 level of banishing so they can do this. Banishing gesture. Certain hand gesture, uttering the phrase. So there's a lot of detail here that adds extra flavor. Single round to perform. Ongoing effects are disrupted. Ooh, you can permanently dissipate back to the astral plane, incorporeal beings, ghosts and things like that, I imagine. Shadows. Yeah, so there's some very specific mechanics for all of these that it's one of those things where I would focus on as Magisters learn these. And I would have them briefly look it over whenever choices are applicable so they can see kind of like what they have available to them and they can make an informed choice. Temple raising. So this is how you make the Magister's temple. Very important. Very important. If you raise a temple, no incorporeal entities or supernatural entities of any kind will be able to enter the temple unless bidden by the Magister. No magic of any kind cast outside the temple will be able to have an effect within the temple. Very useful because there is a magic ability that a Magister can get where they cause an earthquake, or a demon can make a building collapse. So stuff like that. Within the temple, the Magister will have +4 to all summoning checks. We already went over that. The Magister who created the temple will also have a +2 bonus to any other magic checks performed inside, while any other Magister will have +1. So no place like home. Magical effect is permanent. However, if some kind of magical work is not performed inside the temple at least once every 6 months, effects will be lost and the ceremony will need to be performed again. Battle magic. So this is kind of more like the wizard that everybody knows and loves, the battle magic. The blasting wand. So you can make a blasting wand. Basically, you need a particular kind of wood. I think it's almond or ash. Almond or ash, yeah. Concentrated with magical oils. Certain costs involved. Not, 40 shillings. That's not that bad. The wand must be fitted with an outer copper shell, extend from the point. So this is stuff that as a GM you'd just be like, oh, yeah, you've got the materials, you did it, you made it, fantastic. And has to have a special fitting on the tip. It must be especially cut crystal, quartz, or topaz. Costs at least that. Magically activated in a nighttime ritual before or during a thunderstorm. So there's a lot involved with it, but it's one of those things where once you make it, you got it for a while. Ritual takes about an hour to perform. Ritual is incredibly taxing on Magister's body. So again, this is very long-term campaign shit here. I would recommend if you're doing a short-term campaign, maybe just give them a blasting one. Maybe. But you can't just take it from somebody because it has to be attuned to you. You'd have to redo the ritual for yourself. When they use it, does damage based on the level of the Magister at the time of activating the blasting wand. So the stronger the Magister is, the higher level, the more potent the blasting wand is whenever you activate it. So ultimately it can be up to like 3d6 plus 3 if you're level 9. But it starts at 1d6 plus 1. After each successful strike, you must attempt a magic check versus DC 13 to recharge the wand. To do this, you must be holding the wand, and it takes 1 round of full concentration. So, again, this is kind of like the way I would probably use this if I were the Magister. So I would have this tucked away, and if somebody is accosting me, I would whip this bitch out and then, use it to attack them. And after that, I might use a dagger because you don't want to try and recharge it and fail, and then be all like, hold on, recharging. If they succeed, it's charged until the next time you successfully strike an opponent. If you fail, you cannot attempt to recharge the wand until the next morning. No one but the Magister who performed the ritual to activate the wand can use it. However, if another Magister obtains, they can perform the ritual on the wand that was already properly constructed to activate it. Bread of Gideon, very cool one. Lets them create a magical bread that will cause misfortune to anyone who attacks the individual who ate it. You just bake bread, and it makes you better at that. Someone who attacks you, you have a -1 to be hit and a +1 save per level, Magister level. Person who made the bread. Everyone who's eaten the bread up to the limit stated will find that in combat all opponents have a -1 penalty to hit them, and if they have a +1 penalty to saving throws against any magical text from an opponent, this does not extend to saving throws from things that are not directly in attack, such as traps. Additionally, against creatures of a magical nature. Effect lasts until next sunrise. They can make as much bread as they want, but each separate loaf that is consumed requires a new magic check, and if a Magister fails, he cannot perform the rite again for the rest of the day, even if he still has bread left over. Unseen to enemies, you can do this ridiculous stuff where you do a little dance. You make a DC 15 check, and if you succeed, you can't be seen by anyone with hostile intentions towards you. Who has the same level or hit die as the Magister. So it really is not useful for hiding from powerful entities. Opponents of higher level are unaffected. This will incur usual penalties for opponents. But if you succeed, then you can be in the middle of the battlefield, and people that are trying to kill you can't see you. You can attack them with, advantages, and they have penalties. Any attack a Magister makes on an opponent will grant a +2 surprise bonus. It'll last for 10 minutes per level of the Magister. Very cool. Doesn't cost anything. Just try it. If you fail, then you don't get to do it again until the next day. To make or to break or make tight a seal, a door, window, lock on a chest, manacles, any other sort of non-magical barrier allows the Magister to get through it. So this is kind of like the knock spell. The Magister must kneel before the seal and engage in ritual invocation, draw a certain special things, knock on the seal several times, takes 1 minute or 10 rounds. So it's not something you do on the fly. If you make the check, you can magically open the seal. A Magister can also, by using a different invocation, apply its magic to make a seal impossible to open by ordinary means. So you can also do a magical lock. Very cool. To make the earth tremble, this is the earthquake one I was talking about. DC 19 takes 2 rounds. This is pretty serious stuff. Earth will shake. Fissures open in the ground, landslides. If performed outdoors, the earth in the affected area will shake, causing anyone to require a saving throw against the magic check to avoid being knocked prone. 1 in 6 chance that a fissure will open in the ground with a depth of 1d6 by 10 feet, requiring a second save to avoid falling in. Anyone who falls in the fissure will take 1d6 damage, plus for every 10 foot of depth. I assume that means 1d6 per 10 feet. So that's pretty serious. If the tremor was created in a hilly or mountainous rocks, 5 in 6 chance of landslide or rock slide. I assume that means that you roll a d6, and if it's a 1, you're okay. Or it doesn't happen. This will require a similar saving throw to avoid taking 3d6 damage or 66 damage in the case of mountainous terrain. However, there's also a 1d6 or 1 in 6 chance that the rock slide will expand beyond the area. Actually, I guess in the conventional method, you'd have to roll a 6 for it to not happen. There is a 1 in 6 chance that the rock slide will expand beyond the area effect of the quake, requiring that anyone, including the Magister or other PCs in the general area, will need to make a similar saving throw to avoid the damage. So this is dangerous to even you. If the quake's area of effect encompasses a building, then any building not made of stone will collapse 5 out of 6 times, and any stone building will have a collapse in the area of effect 1 out of 6 times. If a fissure has opened up due to the quake, any buildings in the area will automatically collapse. Anyone inside the buildings will need to make saving throws to avoid taking damage from the collapse. So ultimately, the way that this works, you can theoretically have like a somebody that you're trying to kill who's like waiting in a building, and you can be like, hold my beer, I'm gonna make the whole bitch come down. So if they're inside a building or underground when it's performed, it's bad news. Misfortune cursing, so you can perform curses, mutations, poisoning, disease, etc. Magisters who are not necessarily chaos cultists can perform a curse that warps the fortune of their intended victim, leading them to greater risk of tragedy. Now, this one is bad. Placing this curse is considered a form of witchcraft under both secular and religious laws. Were it to be discovered, it would likely cost the life of the Magister performing such curses. So, you don't usually do that. Astrological talismans. This is what I was talking about earlier when it comes to astrology. And there is more in that supplement. So you can create these talismans that have long-standing effects. There's a lot of detail here. Takes a full day to do. And then here's what the talismans do. +5 skill in a certain subject. So you actually... It's a planetary intelligence. So Venus Magister gains a +2 bonus to reaction rolls, but will drive the Magister to seek corrupt people into hedonism, gluttony, and debauchery. So it's kind of a monkey's paw a little bit. Magister gains +2 to sneaking, hiding, and reaction rolls based on deception, but become driven to obtain material wealth through crime. Yeah, so talismans are pretty neat. Talisman of Jupiter. There's a whole lot here. This is one of the reasons why I really love this system. So true alchemy. This is where you get. So you have minor alchemy. Lets you make a lantern. Has some lore. Lamp will be ever burning. Banishing water. So you can prepare that and use that instead of circle banishing. Draught of courage. Makes you better at fighting. Friendship cake. Aw, makes you love somebody. Dearest friend. It's not like a love potion, but dearest, it'll make you feel like they're your dearest friend. So, potion curative. It's kind of like a panacea, whatever. Magister cannot create this potion by himself. Requires the assistance of a cleric. Must have miraculous powers of both blessing and laying of hands. That's a lot to ask, my friend. But if you do it, you can cure all kinds of shit very quickly. Okay, a lot of rules there for that. Rain powder. Does it do what I think it does? Yep, you can make it rain with a powder. It's pretty serious. Okay, major alchemy. So this is whenever shit gets really serious. So you have Dragonfire. If you're familiar with Game of Thrones, you might have an idea of what that's like. If I remember correctly. This might be the wrong one. Droppings of a dragon. One stride appear at crumbly reddish-brown rock. Potentially be found in caves. Constructing a large 3-man pump which shot out the weapon from the ships. Oh, okay, never mind. It's like a launcher. Like a flamethrower. The Flammenwerfer. That's the lore behind it. Okay, so you can make grenades. 6 shots from a Chira siphon. 2 blasts from a large naval pump. So there are various ways, or conduits for delivery that you can use. Pretty cool. Golem. So yeah, you can make a golem. He'll pound shit for you. It costs a lot. But, I mean, you can have a fucking golem. So, like, why wouldn't you? Why would you not? Look at these attributes here. Initiative is -1, so he's a slow boy. But AC 13, base movement 20 feet, hit die 11. They all have 50 HP, saving throw DC 10, morale 12, so he ain't backing down. Attacks 1 plus 10 to hit, 2d 10 plus 4 damage, which is enough to kill almost anything in one hit. Well, not anything. Anything human. Neutral, except on a natural 1, then it is chaotic. Ooh, you don't want that. Homunculi. So you can make yourself a friend. A lot of information there. I'm not going to get into much detail. They're not weak. 40 HP. They do decent damage. Strength 18, score for the purposes of any feats of strength. So yeah, they're pretty strong. Never kill a living creature unless ordered to by its creator. Every time you do it, there's a 1% cumulative chance that the homunculus will become corrupted. Whew. So, yeah, you don't want to fuck with that too much. Oracle heads, they can tell you the future, I think. I think that's what it did. So there's 2 different types. You know, you can make them once they are completed, perform this. All right. So you're probably getting an idea of what the Magister does now. It's like I said, it's not like ahead of time. It's not in the moment stuff. It is ahead of time stuff. and it is very useful, especially in a game where it is so easy to die. Um, they can do tremendous things, but it's a high mastery class, not system mastery as much as just like player mastery. Um, Elixir of life. So you can make the elixir of life, and it can do shit. It can have detrimental effects, as all good poisons or potions should. But you can get younger and stop aging and get stronger and immortal. Philosopher's Stone. That's very, very, very high level shit. You can do all kinds of stuff with it. All right, currency, coinage. All right, so they have. All right, so you got shillings. What the fuck is the L? Where is it? I know it's here. I know it's here. What does it stand for? Oh, okay, okay. The L is pound. Okay, it's a pound. SH for shilling and P for penny. I thought it was pence. Same. Sad me. Okay, so armor. So armor, like I said, kind of supposed to be more historically accurate and doesn't have the like studded leather and shit like that. Um, you got your weapons and their prices for that. It does say that prices are supposed to vary, but I know that for me, I don't have time to fuck around with that. Usually, I think that the city will have more stock and probably at lower prices, and the country will have maybe higher prices and less variety. Um, that's just my thoughts. Sheffield swords. So these are your non-magical but well-made swords. So Sheffield is actually a place, and it is adjacent to where I am starting my players. But in any case, they're more expensive, but they do more. They +1 bonus to hit, or a +2 bonus to damage. They cost more. Iberian steel, very hard to find. So these are non-magical +1s basically, and or plus whatevers. So I like that personally, because I don't like to go too deep into having a whole lot of magic equipment for the characters. I like for them to like quest for that shit. So it's nice to have like an option that's kind of like a middle ground. Um, Firearms, if you're in the right time period, it's got a little bit of info on that. Animals, so that you can sacrifice them or maybe use them for innocent purposes. Who knows? Clothing by class, social class, and stuff like that, what they would cost. Food, miscellaneous equipment. You've got some travel shit, some boats, cart, chariot, chest, candles, um, trips. You've got selling valuables. Think about that. If PCs are selling items privately to an interested buyer, they're likely to get near full listed price for most items in good condition, but selling many items publicly would be illegal inside a city unless a PC is a member of a specific guild permitted to sell such objects. So that is particularly interesting. Selling items to a retailer, legal or illicit, will fetch considerably less, usually under half the listed cost. So the whole treasure game is possible, but it's going to be harder for the players. This isn't really a game that you play for the treasure delves as much as for the adventure, the experience. Real estate, so you can buy places to live or rent them. Taxation, it's not theft. It's a necessary evil. Sorry, libertarians. Other expenses, so you can hire people to do shit, such as kill things for you. Mercenaries, professionals, laborers. You can get a lawyer. You can get Johnny Cochran. If the glove don't fit, you must acquit. Incomes. So if you've got an office or title, you might get this much money. Typical lord's income, typical earl's income. These will vary because some. What was the expression? Not all rich people are noble, and not all nobles are rich. Something to that effect. Schooling. You can pay for some education. Yeah, move up in the world. Cost of living. So you can just like. Okay, so that's for households. Yeah, you can just make that like kind of. It's kind of just automate that shit. That way you don't have to do quite as much day-to-day stuff. Dowries, if you're going to get married. Encumbrance. So I believe it uses a point system. 20 items on their person generally carry modified by the character's strength bonus. Coins count as one item for every 1,000 coins carried. Quiver with 30 arrows counts as a single item. So yeah, it's a point system. It just condenses items together. Armor does not count as an encumbering item. It has its own effects. Shields, yeah. That is one thing. Like heavier armor has dexterity effects. Like you will have like anything involving dexterity, you have a penalty. Shields only count as encumbering items when carried, not when wielded. Performing any type of skill or action, movement or agility checks involving a dex bonus, like sleeping or flying. Characters carrying more than 10 encumbering items have a -1 penalty. So this, if you want to go into encumbrance and all that, this is what it is. It's simplified. It's easy. Children love it. No, they don't. But I like it. Weapons and armor mechanics. Armor class is based on the armor they are wearing, modified by dex. However, fighters and clerics are specially trained to utilize armor more effectively. Their armor will have a different base value. And another value for every other character class. Additionally, any character wearing heavier armor will have penalties. I already just talked about that. So, unarmored, base for fighters and clerics is 11, but for everybody else is 10. You get to add dexterity to all of these, I believe. Yeah. Yeah, okay. So all of them you get to add your dexterity to it, or you have to. So hopefully your dexterity isn't shit. So padded jack is 13 and 12. You start seeing the disparity here. So the fighters and the clerics have +1 on everything until you get to chain hauberk, which is the heavier armor. So you lose some initiative and you have more penalty to your dexterity, but you get more for your buck. Plate and hauberk, even more bonus. So that's when you're 2 higher than everybody else. Looks like shield is +1 either way. So I was wrong before. My sincerest apologies. Values for shield above are for buckler shields. So those are your basic ones, but there are bigger shields that have more AC, but they are heavier and more penalties. Weapon effects. Unarmed is a D2 or a D3. Fighters and Scotsmen do more damage with these attacks. How much more? It does not say. Yeah, it doesn't say. I find that weird. Oh, derp. Okay. So fighters and Scotsmen use a D3. Everyone else uses a D2. For those who don't know, you can do a D3 in several ways. Right now, everybody's gaming online, so just /roll 1d3, right? But otherwise, you can roll a D4, then re-roll on 4s. That's one way that you can do it. Every other way is heresy. So there you go. missile weapons. So you have a thing to note here. You do not add a dexterity bonus to damage with missile weapons. Okay. When you're doing your melee attacks, it's all strength. There is no finesse. So if you're attacking with a dagger, you still use your strength bonus. You get a little bit of extra shit here. Dagger, using that +2 to initiative. Small, as in like a short sword, hand axe, or club, +1 to initiative. Large weapons, -1. So if you're using a large weapon and you're using full plate, that is -4 to initiative out of 6. So it's pretty rough. You're going to be going last. Lance, you can do stuff on horseback. Has extra uses for polearms. You can use spears and polearms in the second row, which means you can be behind somebody and attack somebody that they are being attacked by. What else? So you have pretty normal missile weapons. The only difference, like I said, compared to 5e is that, well, the ranges are different, and that the penalties, you get static, -2 for short, between short and medium. So that's your 50 to 100 with a sling, for instance. And then a -4 between 100 and 150. And then after that, you're not going to hit. Light crossbows get a +2 bonus to hit, but take a full round to reload. Heavy crossbows take 2 full rounds to reload, but they're more likely to hit. So you might just shoot it and drop it and then charge. Who knows? I like it. Firearms, bombards, you can throw bombs. Firearms, I'm not using firearms. If you're using firearms, and fuck you, you're playing the wrong game. I'm just kidding. Named weapons. Everybody can choose a weapon and give it a name. And that will always have a +1 to hit in combat when you use it. It is your signature weapon. I love this. I love it. Poisons. Poisons are cool. You can make them. You can use them. You can buy them. They do stuff. Everything from death to nausea or madness or all kinds of stuff. Herbal medicines. So this is where you bring in wilderness lore if you are a barbarian, and apothecary if you are a magister. Yeah. So you can make all kinds of curatives. Non-magical alchemical substances. Alkahest, I talked about this before. Doesn't cost much. Pretty cool stuff. Make an acid that will burn through almost anything other than glass. Very cool. Gunpowder. False gold. So you can trick people into... Don't do it. Don't be a dick. Nah, do what you want. It's what RPGs are for. Aqua Regia. Another powerful acid capable of burning through organic material. Oh, is this one not? Will not do damage on the round it's thrown, but will do damage after the next 2 rounds. Okay, yeah. So, yeah. 2d6 damage for 1 round. So it's quicker, but it doesn't have as well. It hurts quicker. Yeah. Or fulminata, false gold, asbestos. +2 bonus against all varieties of fire-based saving throws. Reduce any damage from non-magical fire by 1 point. Natural 1. They will inhale toxic fumes, reducing constitution by 1 point permanently. Ooh. Ouchie. All right, reaction rolls. If you're an OSR person, these are familiar. If you're not, these are not familiar. So this is a fantastic mechanic. I love using it even when I'm not playing OSR. The whole concept is you encounter somebody. What is their disposition to you? Is it random? If it is random, then you use a reaction roll. And you will modify it based on certain factors. So the most obvious factor that we typically use is use the highest charisma modifier in the party. and add that to 2d6. And on the top end, everybody wants to help you and be your buddy. On the bottom end, they want to eat your spleen. So very, very cool. I use it for not even just humans. I use it for animals. I use it for everything, really. And I use it as an improv guide, really. So, like for instance, if you encounter a wild bear, I might roll a reaction roll, and if I roll a 2 or a 3, then that motherfucker is starving and rabid and it wants to eat you. If it rolls a 12, it might be in the middle of, eating a jar of honey. you know, it also might have a red shirt on. Morale rules whenever they've taken their first hit in a battle. After a hit reduces them to less than half their total hit points, or after a hit in a battle, it reduces them to less than 1/3 of their hit points. These are actually 3 moments when you would make morale checks. It's like a reaction roll. If they roll, if you roll above their morale number, then they split. So a creature with a morale of 12 is like never going to run away. You can do group morale whenever they lose their first teammate, whenever they're down to half, or whenever they are down to a third. That's pretty standard morale shit. Wilderness survival, travel times. That's just it's not so much. It's just good stuff to know for running games in general. All right, so hit points, NPCs, and monster hit points. Significant majority of all humans, including peasants, nobles, and non-veterans, are level 0 characters with 1d6 hit points, theoretically modified by high or low constitution. For higher level, you may give them appropriate hit points for a class. Sample stat blocks are provided. Monsters have hit dice, which correspond to how big they are. And some monsters, particularly constructs like golems, may have fixed HP values. So very small is a D2 hit die. Small is D4. Couple of feet of humans is D6. Large animals, D8. Large supernatural creatures like giants, D10. And enormous creatures like a huge dragon roll a D12. Time in combat is measured in rounds. 1 round lasts for 6 seconds of approximate time. Random encounter distances is also an OSR mechanic. It's not used quite as much, I don't believe, in new school play. But whenever you have a random encounter happen, you roll this to determine basically when everybody noticed each other. Or, well, sort of. Whenever it became possible for them to notice each other. And then you roll for surprise attacks. 2 in 6 chance either side might be taken by surprise. They can both be surprised, or one side can be not surprised, and they get to do surprise attacks. So very elegant, simple mechanic. Initiative, D6 modified by Dex and by armor initiative modifiers. Oh, I was wrong. Combat bonus does not apply. So that is just for to hit, basically. Wah, wah, wah. So D6 modified by Dex and Armor initiative modifiers. Initial roll is fixed as basic of initiative for the entire combat, unlike Lamentations, where you do it by round. But round by round, that value may be modified by depending on what actions the character takes. For instance, I believe that casting a spell or doing a prayer, I think, puts you on the bottom of the initiative. I could be wrong. Also, theoretically, changing from a dagger to a heavier weapon would, or changing from a heavier weapon to a dagger would alter your initiative bonus. So, PCs win any ties on initiative against NPCs, If two PCs act on the same initiative, the one with the higher dex goes first. Characters may choose on their turn to hold their action until lower initiative. If they plan to do nothing but movement, may announce so beforehand, they get a +2 bonus to initiative. So if you were just running away, you get to act sooner. Characters who only move but did not declare it do not get the bonus. Characters who take no action at all that round get a +2 to initiative on the next round. So you can hold your, just hold your action, and then you'll be able to act sooner next round. I guess that's what you would do if there's nothing to do in this round. Weapon modifiers to initiative apply to any character attempting a melee attack. Certain actions like reloading or performing some magical skills take 1 round or longer to complete. In this case, the character in question begins their action on initiative, and the action is not completed until the same initiative count on subsequent rounds. If they're interrupted by being struck in melee, or if they take a free attack, their attempt to perform magic is canceled. So, or if they take a free attack is important. That means if you're casting doing a prayer or casting a spell, somebody runs by you and you decide to take a swipe at them, then you have canceled your spell. So be aware of that. Actions. So you can take the movement action and you can move a full 30 feet, or full 90 feet. It's like sprinting. So it's like in 5e if you were to take the dash action. Except you go even further. Well, yeah. So combat, you can choose to make a movement of up to your base movement, usually 30 feet, and also make a melee or ranged attack. So this is just like your standard turn. They can also do a charging attack of up to double their base movement. So you can move 60 feet and do a charging attack. We'll get to that later. Multiple attacks. If you have multiple attacks per round and wish to use them, you cannot move. So if you have 3 attacks because you're a fighter, you have to stand still and make those attacks. Otherwise, you can move and make 1 attack. So this, I feel, is a very good way of kind of like making all of this feel more immersive rather than having somebody run 30 feet and make like 5 attacks in 1 round, which is 6 seconds. I mean, that's superhuman. It does the whole thing about you do each attack on every next count for extra attacks. Magic, if you use magical powers that can be used, cannot move more than 5 feet in the same round. So you're too busy doing your prayers, doing your ritual, whatever, so you can't move more than 5 feet. If a power requires concentration to maintain, a character can walk their base movement each round while concentrating but cannot take any other action. Change weapons. You can put away a weapon in your hand and draw a new weapon, but may move 30 feet. So that is not, you can't do that and also attack. It lets you change weapons and move, but you can also choose to drop whatever's in your hand, draw a new weapon and attack, but you cannot move more than 5 feet, and your attack roll has a -2 penalty. So, really this is trying to make things a little bit more not simulationist, but like more immersive. I mean, if you're doing all these things, then it's going to be harder to focus on your accuracy, I guess. The PCs are not meant to be like superhumans by any capacity. Character may use an object, try to use some kind of skill, or take any number of other actions as covered by the above options. Any special action depends on the GM's judgment, whether it's permissible or not. Free attacks, these are opportunity attacks, basically. Trying to move past them within 5 feet. Trying to move out of melee with them without doing an orderly withdrawal. So you can actually take a withdrawal action, which is basically disengage. Or if an opponent is charging on horseback while the character is armed with a spear or polearm facing the attacker. In all circumstances, a free attack happens as an immediate reaction to what the opponent is doing and does not use up their regular actions or their own initiative turn. However, characters can only make 1 free of attack during a melee round. If they are bound, otherwise restrained, stunned, or unable to act, engaging in grappling, or had declared they were doing full round movement or full defense, cannot take any free attacks. Characters in the process of using magic can take a free attack, but they cancel their magic. Likewise, characters who are in the process of getting up from being prone may make a free attack, but remain prone that round, requiring another full round to get up. Okay, so attacks. Melee attacks, d20 plus strength bonus plus attack bonus by level weapon and weapon hit modifiers. So, very simple, very familiar. Attack bonuses, you're to hit, but you also use strength for ranged attacks. And notice you use strength for everything that is melee. So, no dexterity attacking. For ranged attacks, d20 plus dex bonus plus attack bonus by level. So same thing. Either case, various miscellaneous modifiers that could add or subtract, such as visibility, range, penalties, blah, 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 blah. In 5e, you would use advantage or disadvantage. It's more elegant. You can use that if you want. I'm probably going to stick to the static stuff just because I want to try that. Score a hit, the attack must be equal to or greater than armor class. So we're used to that. Natural 1 and natural 20. All right. Natural 20, if it's a 1, it always misses, regardless of any other modifiers. Natural 20 is a crit. A crit. It always hits. Actually, no. Natural 20 always hits regardless of an opponent's armor class. Additionally, if the natural 20 roll with all modifiers would have hit the opponent's armor class. So this would be if you have an AC above 20, obviously. Then it is a critical hit. If you have an AC above 20 and somebody rolls a natural 20 and the total does not exceed that, it hits, but it's not a critical. So you roll a d20 modified by the charisma modifier of the attacker on the critical hit table. Says below, but it's over here. Fighters also add their level to the result, modify the details of the results according to what is sensible for the kind of strike made. Now, he created a advanced OSR crit table that has a lot more than this based on what kind of weapon or attack is being carried out. And I highly recommend it, and that's what I'm using. But basically, so you add their charisma modifier to, it's basically their luck, more or less. And if they're a fighter, you add their level. And so the higher they roll, the better the thing. So up here, extreme vicious blow, victim must make a saving throw. If they fail the saving throw, they are instantly slain, decapitated, cut in half, snapped like a twig, etc. Even if they succeed the save, they take triple the usual damage. So combat is lethal. Charging. If they're not currently adjacent to an opponent, at least 20 feet away and no more than 60, they can do a melee charge. Grants +1 to hit, but -2 for AC. An opponent of a charged armed with a spear or pole arm, they can get a free attack against a charge and do double damage. Do not charge somebody with a spear. I mean, that's just realism, but still. But only if they are the target of the charge. So you can't do that to somebody else being charged. All right, parrying. So this is a very cool thing. All characters are trying to defend themselves from attacks, and this is largely represented by armor class. But you can declare at the start of your round that you are fighting defensively, actively parrying with your weapon and or shield. To engage in parrying, you must be wielding something capable of parrying in your hands, a metal weapon, a shield, or some other durable object. If you're parrying with anything other than a shield, you also need some sort of hand protection, meaning that either you must be wearing either thick leather or metal gauntlets. If you're wearing armor, you're not. If you're not unarmored, then this should be covered. These are part of Splendid Jack or better quality armor, or can be purchased separately. Leather fighting gauntlets cost about 3 shillings. Characters doing so can engage in partial or total defense. When engaged in partial defense, characters will suffer a -4 penalty to attack rolls during that round. That's pretty serious. But and you cannot move more than your base movement per round. Normal unencumbered base movement is 30. If engaged in full defense, characters will not be able to attack that round and cannot move more than 5 feet, nor can they use any magical object or perform any magic that requires anything other than a free action to activate. A character engaging in defense, if successfully attacked in melee, may make a parrying roll of d20, plus their attack bonus with the type of weapon they're using. If they're parrying with a weapon, if they're parrying with a shield, they add their basic melee attack bonus plus 2. So this gives you a second line of defense to, not get hit. So very, very useful. If you are almost dead and you need somebody to come save your ass. If engaged in total defense, the character gets an additional +4 bonus to parrying rolls. So total defense, that is, and let's say you have a shield and you're doing total defense +4 and a +2. So that's +6, d20 +6, along with your combat bonus. So even more pluses. And so that gives you a pretty good chance of overcoming their attack. If you do, you have to surpass the value of their attack roll. So there's a lot involved here, but it's a very, very cool mechanic if you ask me. If a character successfully parries, you must do a blocking roll of a d4 or a d8 if parrying with a shield. This roll is modified by the defender's strength bonus. If the shield being used as a magical bonus is also added. Finally, fighters and clerics get a further bonus equal to their level. So fighters and clerics can parry really well. The attacker rolls their damage normally. So they've already hit. You've already parried. Now you're blocking. If the attacker's roll damage surpasses the value of the blocking roll, the attack does full damage. So there's no partial damage here. If the blocking roll is higher than the attacker's damage roll, then the damage was absorbed by the parry. So basically, fighters and clerics have a much better chance, especially if they're using a shield, of being able to absorb the entire damage of an attack. But there's always a chance it can go through. Characters using partial defense can only attempt to do one parrying roll per round. So total defense, you can do it, you keep on, you're able to continuously do it, but you get penalties as you go along. Characters engaged in total defense can attempt to parry all attacks, but suffer cumulative -1 to every parrying roll, not blocking, parrying. After the first, characters cannot attempt to parry surprise attacks. They can attempt to parry free attacks if they were already engaged in defensive combat at the time of the attack and are aware of the incoming attack. Characters cannot attempt to parry ranged attacks except for fighters with shields, who may attempt to do so at a -8 penalty. So you can block arrows with your shield. Firing into melee. Basically, you get a penalty, -4 to your attack roll. If you would have hit without the -4, then you hit your friend. You basically, that's basically how it works. You can't use. Let's see. You hit the opponent they were in melee with. There's more than one character. Roll randomly to determine who suffers the hit. So if you have 2 people there, roll a d4. Odds is 1, evens is the other. That kind of thing. If you're shooting at somebody who's huge and the people around them are not huge, then you can hit them fine. It doesn't apply. If the target of a ranged attack had spent their previous action either engaging in a full movement, that is running, the attacker has a -2 penalty to hit with their ranged attacks. I like that. Aimed shots, you can choose to forego your attack that turn, so that on the next round they have a +4 bonus to hit. Very nice. Mounted combat. Characters on horseback gain +1 bonus to hit opponents on foot. They're in melee combat. They gain a +1 bonus to their AC against any attacks from opponents on foot. These bonuses to AC also applies to the mount. Only war horses can effectively be used to fight in combat. Any other type of horse will make a morale check every round that there is combat, and if they fail, will run off out of control of their rider, requiring a riding check to avoid being thrown in the first round, and a second DC
riding check in the next round to regain control, subjecting the PC to standard free attack from any opponent in melee combat with them. War horses only check morale in the usual circumstances listed in the rules on morale, and will not throw their riders, but only lose control and try to flee if they fail the check, requiring a DC 15 riding check to avoid this. Any mount that takes enough damage to be knocked unconscious or killed will fall to the ground. Any characters on that steed will have, so it hurts. And you're basically stuck for a moment until you get yourself free. A character with one-handed medium weapon or lance can do a mounted charge on horseback from 20 to 80 feet away. They get a +2 to hit and do double damage on a hit. Very nice. Opponents with spears or polearms can get a free attack. So there's a bit of strategy there. Characters are shooting a ranged attack, a ranged weapon while moving on horseback. Moving faster than 30 feet in the round, they have a -4 penalty to hit. So it's just harder to do horseback archery while moving. Visibility and cover, -12 penalty if you can't see them for any reason. Total darkness, struck blind, -6 to all melee, -12 to all ranged. Characters who have no visibility are always considered surprised for the purposes of being attacked by any character who can see. So remember, +2 normally is a surprise attack, +4 if you're a thief. Invisible opponents operate much the same way. All foes who cannot see the invisible have the same penalties. And only stand a chance of attacking at all if they have a vague idea of where the opponent might be. And invisible opponents can strike any foe they see normally as if it were a surprise attack. Characters who are partially covered behind a solid object, like a wall, gain +2 bonus to AC. So, if you were trying to fight an invisible opponent, you would need to be able to see where they're at somehow. I would probably handle this like if they throw flour on it or something like that, they'll be able to see it, or they'll be able to see where footsteps are. Flour or sand, probably flour more than anything because it'll stick to them better. Or I might like give them an opportunity for listen checks and give like Cymri a bonus because they have a 6th sense. Withdrawal, so you can do a withdrawal, or you can make opportunity attacks. It already talked about that, basically. Withdrawal is a full action. Grappling is very cool in this, if you ask me. So D20 plus strength bonus plus basic melee attack bonus, potentially with modifiers for skills or other factors. Target rolls the same, but may choose to substitute dexterity, so they can try and wriggle free. Now, here's where it's interesting. So when you successfully grapple on your turn, let's say you initiate the grapple, they're kind of at a bit of an advantage in a way. So a successful grapple maneuver, they're both grabbing each other. Neither can take any action in the next round other than do a wrestling maneuver, and both count as though they would be surprised against attacks from any other opponent. So it'd be not unfeasible for a fighter to grab somebody so that a thief can come up and then do a backstab very easily. They'll get the +4 to hit, and then they'll do double damage or more. Let's see. A character who is already wrestling, whether or not he was the one who initiated, may attempt on a subsequent round. I guess there is no advantage then. So you spend the first round just doing wrestling maneuvers. But after that, you can make another wrestling maneuver to attempt to break free, to strike your opponent, or to attempt to pin your opponent. Note that it doesn't matter if a character was the victim or instigator of the... So even if you grab them, there is a potential that they might be able to pin you down if you fail to pin them down. A success at attempting to break free releases the wrestling status. A successful strike maneuver deals damage, which can only be unarmed from a gauntlet or from a dagger. While a successful pin means the opponent becomes unable to move or take any action for however long the attacker chooses to dedicate to his full action with each round holding the pin. So that is substantial. If you are successfully pinned, you are fucked. Somebody has to basically get them off you. It doesn't look like you have any recourse at that point. Yeah. That's what it looks like. Unless breaking the wrestling is, yeah. I think that at that point they're pinned. Somebody has to get them to get the other person to stop. So that would be a voluntary or probably a voluntary action. I would probably allow some contested stuff where somebody else could come and I guess wrestle that person off of them. Tripping. So successful tripping. It's the same maneuver. Make them fall to the floor up to 5 feet away. Um, Getting up from the prone position takes a full round. So this is a lot more significant than in 5th edition, where you just use half your movement. In this case, you gotta spend your whole turn doing it. Uh, Disarming. You can use a grappling maneuver to disarm an opponent. If the defender has a weapon in their hand and the attacker doesn't, the defender gets a free attack against his assailant before the maneuver is executed. So this is another chance for an opportunity attack. Somebody tries to steal your weapon, you can try and attack them. If the maneuver is successfully executed, the attacker has knocked the opponent's weapon out of their hand, the weapon falling to the ground up to 5 feet away in the direction chosen by the attacker. If the maneuver succeeds by a margin of 5 or more, the attacker is unarmed. They may choose instead to end up wielding the weapon disarmed from the opponent. Any weapon that is on the floor takes a full round to pick up. So again, this is also more significant than it is in 5th edition, because theoretically all you have to do is use your free action to pick a weapon back up. In this, you have to dedicate a round to grabbing your weapon. So, yeah, disarming is useful again. Yay! Injury. Characters who reach precisely 0 HP. So this is the tier system I was telling you about. HP are unconscious and will recover consciousness and 1 HP after 1d6 times 10 minutes, or if revived by a DC 10 healing check. So they are very easy to bring back from the near death. But that's only if they land on 0. Characters at -1 or -2 are gravely injured. They will be unconscious when first injured, but they can be stabilized by any character making a healing check. If they are not stabilized within 10 minutes, they will lose 1 HP and will continue to do so every 10 minutes until stabilized or killed. So that is basically bleeding to death. Stabilized characters regain consciousness but are unable to take any physical actions and remain at their current HP level but not at risk of losing more HP. So the whole concept there is if you don't have a way to magically heal them and get them out of this range, they are basically dead weight. So, they're going to need to be carried away from battle. They're going to need to be brought to a bed, given proper medical attention, and then rest over a period of days. A cleric can help speed all of that up. And so can a magister with proper medical training. Or technically a Cymri, I guess. Let's see. So -3 or -4 are mortally wounded and can only be stabilized by a higher check of DC 15. If they're stabilized, they're immediately brought back up to -2. Until stabilized, they will lose 1 HP every 1d10 minutes. When stabilized, they will keep slipping in and out of consciousness, unable to take any physical actions or even to communicate, until getting to at least -1. Characters at -5 can only be saved by magic and will lose another hit point after 1d10 rounds. If a character drops to -6 or less, they immediately die. And this is not a game with resurrection. Saving throws. Saving throws are like they always are. Healing and recovery. Recover lost hit points through magic or special powers. Otherwise, they recover lost hit points naturally through healing herbs, medical care, or rest. A character with 1 or more, very important, 1 or more, remaining HP rests for a full night will recover their level and hit points, modified by con bonus. So that's not bad unless you have a low con. If the modified total is less than 1, they recover 1 HP for every 2 days of regular rest, or from a full 24-hour period of rest. So they can be bedridden for 24 hours and get that 1 HP per day. Let's see. So that's really only a problem for level 1s, unless you have a really bad con bonus. Characters who already recover 1 or more HP normally can recover 1 extra if they get a rest for 24 hours. That's really not a whole lot. If you're already getting your level and your level is like 5 and then you have a good con bonus, because then you would be getting like maybe 8 HP for your 8 hours and just getting 1 more after that. It's just kind of meh. Characters at negative HP only recover 1 HP per 24 hours of rest. Con bonuses do not modify, but healing herbs and medical treatments can. Anyone under the care of someone with medical skill will heal twice their regular HP for a night or day of rest if the doctor makes a DC 15 skill check to treat them that day. Characters at negative HP being treated by a doctor who makes the skill check will heal 2 HP per 24-hour period instead of 1. Healing herbs can add to these healing rates. Aging, whenever you get to 40, -1 to strength and con. At the age of 50, you start having to make saving throws or you lose random ability scores. If any ability score falls below 3, you become bedridden. And if it reaches 0, you die. So being old is a thing. Illness. There are systems for illness. There are diseases. Tough subject right now. I'm not going to fuck with that. But the illnesses are pretty realistic, and I like the mechanics for them. Falling damage, D6 for every 10 feet, maximum of 20 D6. I mean, if you fall 200 feet, you're fucking dead. I'm sorry. In fact, I think that he says, depending on the situation, the character may be able to perform a dexterity skill check. Yeah. 20 HP of damage. That's a lot in this game. You'd have to have 15 to survive. It's possible. And you'd have to roll all 1s. That's a lot of one. No, you're dead. I'm sorry. If you fall 200 feet, you're dead in this game. Fire damage, D6 fire damage every round you're on fire. Every round you're in contact with fire, you have a 1 in 6 chance of catching fire yourself. Typically, it requires full round action to put yourself out of fire. So I like that. Fire is important. Experience, you get a level on you get experience on a per session basis. So you start at level 0. You get your first level after completing your first adventure, and then after that you get 1 XP for finishing a session. The number of sessions increases substantially per level. So, well, I say substantially. It gets pretty major. So like I said, long-term game. Jack with it as much as you want. I like this setup. I don't know if I'm going to keep it verbatim. We're just going to have to see how that goes. Because I don't want them to level too fast, but I also don't want it to be too slow. Especially because I'm playing with people that I've never played with before, and I don't know how much patience they have. Treasure. So we have treasure tables, very useful. That are dependent. They're subtables that kind of like help you as far as determining what would be in what kind of place. And it's all geared towards the medieval setting. So very cool. Magic items also geared towards this particular medieval authentic setting. You have a lot of really cool magic items. They have their own lore to them, so that it's not just, a name and a stat block. They have a lot to them so that you can really bring all of this information into your setting and bring it all to life. I've read them all. They're all very cool. So we have the appendix here, monsters. The monster stat blocks are very basic for old school people. I like that the boars will keep on fighting until they're at -4 because they're stubborn motherfuckers. That also happens for, I think, a bear, maybe. There's, like special info for each one. So these are all your basic animals. And then you have your kind of bizarre ones like a giant frog, um, the size of a very large dog. They have their own kind of a method of, like restraining you with their tongue and stuff like that. You got giant rats, um, dire wolves, but those are like fairly um, common even in low magic, like low fantasy games. Here's where you get to the fantastical stuff. So demons are already covered. Those are in the summoning section. Dragons do exist, but they are very, 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 very rare and very fucking tough. Look at this 8d10 hit die. Your characters are not doing a whole lot of damage in this game at one time. This isn't a game where you're rolling, 8d6 for your fireball. But yeah, so they're tough motherfuckers. If they see a dragon, they probably need some fucking henchmen. They need some numbers. They need all the help they can get. That's a small dragon. Large dragon, 12d12. Average hit points is usually what, like for a d12 is like 7, I think. So 7 times 12. I don't know, like 84, some shit like that. I'm not a mathematician. Flying speed, breathe fire, better senses. They can talk. Breath. So they're similar to the dragons that we know and love. Elves are not. The elves are evil. They will kill you. They also cause fear. Yeah. So if you're certain, if you're one hit die or less, you automatically become paralyzed with fear. Or if you're a Cymri. So if you're a Cymri, then you might be able to resist it. If you're higher level, you're able to resist it. Clerics are more likely to resist it. Elves get pretty fucking rough. 12d6 hit die. Demon sword 1d8 plus 2 or special, and then there's a special thing. Maiden elves. So then you get your fantastical creatures that are more common in your fantasy games. So you got a basilisk, black dog, a rare type of demonic chaos creature from the lower planes, chaos slime, griffin. I like that the chaos slime has random effects that can happen, and random abilities. Griffin, hippogriff, wyvern, strix, sinister birds, unicorns. It's got a nice little beard here. Goblins and other humanoids. You got dwarves, Eoten, which those are giants, right? Giants been mutated by chaos. So frogmen. Frogmen are in the Dark Albion setting. They are one of the potential baddies that you can encounter. Basically, the French are frogmen. So take that, French. Clay giants, ratmen. I love that illustration. Trolls, ogre. I also love the werewolf. It's got a nice bit there to keep you from seeing what you don't want to see. You've got human stat blocks. They're pretty much as you'd expect, appropriate for the class, the emulation of class, PC characters. You have undead, so you got a mummy, ghost, phantom knight, revenant, will-o-wisp. There's quite a bit here. It's not like the monster manual or anything like that, but fortunately, this is using stat blocks that we're familiar with, and you can just port shit over if you want. Information on trials. So this is how to run trials. You can, have all these things that influence the outcome. You can have people hire a lawyer, maybe one of the party members if they have, criminal law secular law rather, lore, then they can, serve as your lawyer. Um, Ultimately, you can have everything from being hung or hanged or whatever, um, to all kinds of other outcomes. You can do trial by combat, trial by vision. Is usually something if you're a cleric. Um, it's pretty severe though. It's like God either says yes or no, and if God says no, then you're burned at the stake. um, Appellate court, wilderness adventurings. There's some tables and information on what it's like out in the wilderness for the GMs. This is all GM side shit. Um, Very useful for emulating this setting. Here is your ye old lion and dragon character sheet. As you can see, it's very familiar. Social class is one of the newer things. Home territory is also rather useful. Prepared spells. That's kind of an oddity, if you ask me. You got retainers, as every good OSR game should have. This is using the rules that it has for faction-based play. So you can have or belong to a house, and there can be house things going on. Additionally, as you are playing, there can be yearly events that affect things. So there's the foundation for play that is more faction-based. I'm trying to remember if it's actually included in here, though. It doesn't appear to be. So I believe that it's in the Dark Albion book. I don't see anything on that here. Honestly, that stuff is fairly simple. The devil's in the details, though. Like, as far as the mechanics are relatively simple, but the devil is in the details on how you run all that faction-based stuff, and there are a lot of really useful tables and information on how all that should work. I don't think there is anything on... I like that I can click on stuff to move there. Very well-made PDF, I will say. It doesn't look like it. So if you're interested in that, you can get that from Dark Albion, or there's actually an supplement. It's a RPG Pundit Presents one that has those rules, or what I would recommend is just spring for the what is it called? It's an anthology, and it has all of his medieval related ones. I'll put a link in the description or something like that. But anyway, that covers everything. I'm probably going to have to parse through this and do some timestamps so that it's not because this has been a long time. I've been at this for a while, so I hope that it was useful. Let me know, and thanks for tuning in. I don't remember how to turn off my stream, so I'm just going to do it the old-fashioned way. Oh, I guess this is how.